Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting and joint meeting with the Rockland Board of Water Commissioners for Tuesday, August 9, 2022. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Select Person Shortall, could you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at www.youtube.com/WRPS-Rockland. Please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. First on the agenda, community announcements. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. I do have one announcement that the water superintendent asked me to make. The Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks is experiencing a severe water shortage. Our reservoirs and groundwater supplies are critically low. All outside water usage is prohibited for all uses. Please conserve our drinking water for fire protection and consumption. Thank you for your cooperation. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, minutes, review and approval of minutes of July 12, 2022.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 12th, 2022.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, next on the agenda, under new business, Rockland Farmers Market, one-day liquor license, date change to August 27th. Doug?
Right, so I don't think Allison, the market manager, is here, but they did ask simply that we change the date for the last one-day license that was approved. Just because of the heat, they're going to be postponing it until August 27th. So it's really just a date change. And as I'm looking through the minutes from that last meeting, I know that it's definitely for independent fermentations brewing. It's unclear to me on whether 10th District Brewing is also included, so I would include them in your motion just to cover it, just in case they are planned. So it's just changing the date for what was previously approved to August 27th.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, a motion to approve for both vendors. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. All right, next on the agenda, Rockland Water Commissioner, single vacancy appointment per Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11. We have two candidates, David Saucier and Debbie Dooner. It's a joint vote with the Board of Water Commissioners. I ask June Pat Donnelly to open up the Water Commissioners meeting.
Open the Rockland Water Commissioners meeting at 7:05.
Okay, is David Saucier here? David, can you come on up to the microphone? Welcome, David. Thank you. Thanks for your interest in this position. We just wanted to have you, come before us, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what experience you bring to the position.
Well, I just turned 61 years old, and I've had a pick and shovel in my hand for the past 45 years. I've done several road projects over the years, both with PA Landis for about 15 years, and almost 9 years on the Big Dig in Boston. Currently, I'm self-employed, and I still do some repair work on water services, hydrants and whatnot. I've done a lot of installation and repair, and I think that could be a valuable asset.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Saucier? Ward?
Well, considering the issues we have with Rockland Water currently, what are some of your ideas for improving that?
Well, I think the water quality needs to be a little better than it is. Yeah. I'm not an expert with your treatment plants, but I'm all for anything in the future that could make the quality of the water a little better. And then obviously, like everybody else around this part of the country right now, there's a shortage of water. So that's, I think it's the first time in my 25 years in Rockland, I've seen the beach at Reed's Pond.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, it's in need of some, you know, there's a lot of old pipes in the ground. That stuff all takes money to replace.
Yep.
So it's not gonna be an overnight solution, for sure.
Okay. So maybe we can do a rain dance.
Yeah, big one.
And we're putting in granulated activated charcoal filters.
Yeah.
So those will certainly help with the
Yeah.
PFAS issues. Do you have experience in dealing with that stuff, or is that pretty?
All my experience is in the road.
Yep,
I've done a
Okay.
couple of backflow systems.
yep,
Years back at Edgar Station in Weymouth, but most of my experience is in the field.
okay. Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Mr. Saucier? No? Okay.
I do, actually. Hi, Mr. Saucier. My name's Tiffany Needham. I wanted to thank you for coming and for being interested in this position. What I wanted to know is, I know your experience, you've mentioned in the field. I'm just curious, what attributes do you find or do you feel would be important for this position? And then what attributes do you think of those that you have?
Well, I've seen some things in the past, repair work get done that, I won't say it wasn't totally the wrong way to do it, but definitely some improvement needs to be done in that area. And then another big thing is the actual quality of the water. But like I say, don't have any plant experience, I'm not gonna tell you that I do. All my experience has been, fortunate for me, it's been in the trenches, so.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, is Debbie Dooner here? Debbie, come on down.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Right?
So same questions that we asked Mr. Saucier. What is, give us a little bit of your background and, you know, what has facilitated the interest on your part to join the Rockland Water
Okay,
Commission?
I am a lifelong resident of Rockland. I'm 63 years old. I'm a graduate of Rockland High School. I have an environmental science degree from Quincy College. I worked at the water department for 24 years as a chief operator, running the treatment plants. I have seen a little bit of distribution, but not a lot. You know, my husband and I have raised our children here, and you know, the quality of the water coming out of the treatment plants, except for the PFA, whatever that thing is coming out of Hingham Street, the quality of the water is pretty good. It's once it hits the pipes that it's picking up a lot of the rust and the, you know, the stuff that's lining the pipes. I mean, some of the water comes all the way from Pembroke and it's coming all the way up. So I mean, the quality of the water, except for the problem right now, which we're hoping that the GAC will fix. The problem is mostly the pipes, I believe, more than the treatment end of it. Everybody in the water department, I've worked with a lot of them. I worked with a lot of them for a lot of years. I think they do an exceptional job with what they have. They're very dedicated and they're loyal. And the reason I'm getting into it is I semi-retired. I only work a couple days a week now instead of 5 days a week, so I have the time to put into it. And before, I really didn't have the time to do it.
Okay. Lori?
Well, yeah, same question. What are the biggest challenges that the water department's facing now as far as water quality, and what are your thoughts on
The
the
biggest
trajectory
challenge,
of
of
it?
course, right now is we need rain desperately. But as far, like I said, as far as the quality goes, I don't think it's too bad coming out of the treatment plants. I think they do a good job of treating the water. but unfortunately, when it hits those pipes that are sometimes 100 years old or close to it, it's picking up the taste, it's picking up, you know,
So replacing the pipes?
replacing the pipes would be
Yeah.
the first, but it would be a very, very expensive thing to do, a very expensive thing. The GAC that they're gonna put in at Hingham Street will help with a lot of the taste problems, if there's any taste problems coming out of Hingham Street. Because granulated activated carbon takes, you know, what they call polishes the water. So it just gives it a little bit of, so it tastes better when it comes out. So I think that would be, but the biggest thing right now is we need more water. You know, we need more water, and I think we need to kind of, I know the water department's doing the best they can, but I think we need to, like, maybe slow down on the developments around a little bit and just try to, you know, a lot of people in this town have lived here for a long time, and I think they should be able to use the water and not give it to somebody else. That's my my own opinion.
So you brought that up, so it wasn't a question that was asked before, but since you just mentioned it, we are obviously a joint waterworks. So how do you express that to the Abington portion of the water commissioners?
Well, the town of Abington's in the same problem that we are. We share the three sources of water. So if we're having problems at Hingham Street or Sandy Bottom or Myers Ave, they're having problems too.
But we can have moratoriums and still, you know, the town of Abington can still continue to develop with what capacity
Right, we would definitely have to work with the town of Abington. You know, the town of Abington and the town of Rockland have worked together very well since 1884. 1884, that Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks started.
Yep.
And they've worked very well together all these years, so you know, there would probably be a little bit of a push and shove, you know, but there'd have to be some compromise, but I think that they could do it, definitely.
Tiffany, you have a question?
I do. Once again, thank you for coming in today and for making yourself available for this position.
Thank you.
It's so important for all of us to participate. My question for you, same as before, is what experience and attributes do you feel are important for the position, and then in turn, which ones do you have as well?
Like I said, I worked for the water department for 24 years. I was the first female operator at the water department. I was the first female chief operator at the water department. My experience, you know, I ran the treatment plants on a day-to-day basis every day. I did the scheduling, I had ordered the chemicals, I did all that. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of experience in distribution, but I have some. My father worked for the water department for over 40 years, so I have some in the distribution place. So I have some experience. I have knowledge of what's going on, and I know the history of the water department, which I think sometimes is important. You know, what happened, you know, what did they do, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever. So I think that's those are my attributes. As far as, I work pretty well with others most of the time. I do have very strong opinions, but I think I have the knowledge to kind of push those opinions a little bit if I think I need to. But right now, I attended a meeting last month with Crystal, who is the manager superintendent, and I think she has a very good handle on things. I really do. I was very, very impressed with her, very impressed. She is from the treatment end of the water department as opposed to the distribution end. The last two superintendents have been distribution people. Nothing wrong with that, but sometimes they don't always understand the treatment end of it. So I understand mostly treatment, but I do understand some of the treatment, the distribution stuff too. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you said, just to piggyback on, I think something you said that you're partially retired right now?
Yes, I'm semi-retired. I only work 2 days a week now.
At the water plant?
No.
Okay.
I left the water plant quite a few years ago, but
Okay.
I work for H&R Block.
Okay.
So
If you don't mind, what was the reason for leaving the water plant?
It's a very stressful job. We'll leave it at that. I had family obligations,
Okay.
and
Okay.
it's a very stressful job. You're on 24/7, 365.
Okay, I can understand that. Okay, thank you, Debbie.
You're
Appreciate your
welcome.
time.
Thank you.
Okay, so with all of these appointments that we do with the joint board, one of the policies that we've kind of had in place over the years has been that we generally defer to whatever the board, the other joint board is that's appointing, whatever their decision is what we kind of stand by. So with that, Pat, Bob, you guys want to come up? Just offer, you know, a couple, what your thoughts are, and if you guys want to make a motion or something like that, or?
And Pat, just, I know it's hard because the air conditioners are on, but just try to speak up if you can.
I will. You can make a motion.
Well, just your thought process behind it as well.
We got two good candidates here, and as both of them said, we have plenty of personnel down there that know the treatment plants, the treatment end of it. It's the road work, the pipes, and I'm the only one on the board out of 6 members that know the road work. I know nothing about the treatment end of it, nothing. So for that reason only, I'm gonna make a motion for Dave Saucier.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Dave.
I'm gonna second that motion.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, 2 for David Saucier from the Water Commissioners. I'll entertain a motion from the Board of Selectmen.
Follow the lead of the Water Commissioners, and I will make a motion to appoint David Saucier to the Water Commissioners.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, for your interest.
I'm closing the Rockland Water Commissioners meeting at 7:20.
Perfect. Thanks, Pat. Okay, next on the agenda, appointments. Susan Sullivan, Rent Control Board, reappointment.
So Susan is not here as a reappointment, Mike. We assumed it would be okay since she's previously been appointed. And I just wanted to highlight that she would be the Leisure Woods tenant representative, and it's a 3-year term.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to reappoint Susan Sullivan.
Motion to reappoint Susan Sullivan to the Rent Control Board.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
2 seconds?
Yeah.
A motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, next is Jean Morton, Cultural Council. Jean here? Come on up, Jean. Jean, welcome. Just like to, anytime there's somebody that's new to a board or a committee, we just like to put a face with the name.
Okay.
And kind of get an idea of what your interest is in joining the cultural council.
Okay. Well, I'm a property manager in town, and one of the buildings is the Wright Building, our art building over on Webster and Liberty. We currently have about 150 artists in the building. I'm a Rockland person. I went to Rockland High School. I'm back for about 5 years now in town. And my goal would be to I want to connect our artists to the community. So I'm kind of trying to find different avenues to do that. And this seemed like a good idea. I think we have a lot to offer as far as classes and all these things. I just don't know how to get it out there. So I thought if I was on the council, it may help me.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions for Jean?
I have a question. So the 4th floor artist building is full of artists. What would it take to get a mural on the Webster Street side of?
We are actually working on that.
Excellent.
The owner of our building has said she'll match any grants that we get.
Okay.
So that's another, we want to do, there's 2 sheds on the property too, which you'll notice if you drive by, we've painted kind of a summer yellow. Prepping them for a mural. We've filled in all the cracks, done everything we could. So it's just a matter of writing the grant at this point. I have a muralist in-house with us that will help. I just want it to be kids in the community, at least for the big one. So they need a lead. So I have an artist to do that. We just have to write a grant, which I have experience, and I come from higher ed background.
That's wonderful.
So I have that experience.
And Doug, do we have ARPA funds to go toward
Yeah,
that?
we have talked about that, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
So
that's-
it's definitely on the top of our list.
great.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any questions?
I just want to say it's a pleasure to meet you, and
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
very much looking forward to your contribution.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you for having me.
So I'll entertain a motion.
A motion?
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. Next, Anthony Tansy, Recreation Committee.
So he was unable to come tonight, so you can pass over him for a future meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Joanne Donnelly, Open Space. Joanne, welcome. Just same thing, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your experiences, and what you think you
Sure.
bring to the Open Space Committee.
I have, I've lived in Rockland for a little over 2 years now, and I live on what used to be the McCarthy Farm, and so I've been involved with the town, I've been involved with Doug and the Open Space Committee throughout that process, and I've seen how the town sort of embraced the whole, concept of changing the property to open space and what they went through with the builder and how they really focused on that whole initiative, and I really appreciated how it occurred and how the town embraced it, and so I just felt like I would really like to be part of that whole process in the future.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Joanne? None? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Unanimous, thanks, Joanne.
Welcome.
Okay, next on the agenda, appointment Kara Nyman, Plymouth County Advisory Committee. Want to stay up here, you want to go down there? No, you good?
I'm
All
just
right.
looking for a reappointment to the Plymouth County Advisory Committee.
I'll entertain a motion to reappoint Kara.
Motion.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Good.
Second, all those in favor? That's unanimous, okay.
Thanks.
Good job, Kara. All right, next on the agenda, approval of disclosure by non-elected municipal employee of financial interest and determination by appointing authority as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19. Deborah, Roby, Rent Control Board.
Hello.
Deb,
Hello.
welcome.
Hi.
Deb, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I mean, I can kick it off, and then I think Ms. Roby should probably speak to it herself. You'll see in your packet, there's an email exchange that Ms. Roby explains that she has been approached to sell a home in Leisure Woods, and just to avoid any potential appearance of a conflict of interest, as she's on the Rent Control Board, she spoke with the State Ethics Commission, also spoke with an attorney from our town council's office, and they agreed that there is no actual conflict, but again, because of any potential appearance, they did recommend that she fill out this disclosure form, which you read the title, which we included on the agenda, which she's properly filled out. And her request tonight is for you as the appointing authority to approve that form. If you do that, you would sign that. I think it would be Mike as the chairman. Then it would be filed with the town clerk's office. But certainly Ms. Roby can add any more to that if she likes.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I am a Realtor. I've been a Realtor for 4 years, and I have been approached by a resident in Leisure Woods to sell their home. This is actually the second one. The first one I denied, or I declined selling it because I was afraid that there could be a conflict, or the appearance of a conflict. So at the second approach, I decided that I should probably take the matter further, and I did contact the Massachusetts Association of Realtors, their legal counsel, They didn't feel that that would be an ethics issue, and then I approached the ethics board for Mass, so that's why I'm here tonight.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Deb in regards to this? Lori?
No, I just wanted to thank you for dotting all your i's and crossing all your t's.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
that's a good thing, so.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds, all those in favor?
Yep.
Thank you.
Unanimous. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Town Clerk Liza Landy, election law changes, the Votes Act, poll worker appointments, police officer assignments, 150-foot rule. Liza, welcome back.
You know how much I love coming
know.
for you.
I gotta tell you,
Thank
it's not the hot seat.
And I'd like to thank my Board of Registrar, Jerry Callahan, for coming. He said he's only window candy, but it's been a challenge.
Yeah.
On June 23rd, the state informed the town clerks of the new laws that they have put into place, some of which were implemented due to COVID in 2020, and now they're making them permanent changes. So I'm here to talk about those things. Mandatory early voting, I've given a list. I would also like the public to know that the week of August 27th is a Saturday, and then that following week we'll be having early voting, 8:30 to 4:30 here at Town Hall. And with that being said, the town halls have now been deemed a polling location. So there'll be the 150-foot rule, and I spoke with Tom Rubel, who has told me that from the building side of the building department side of the building to the trees is 89 feet. So no matter, like, that's such a, you know what I mean? So there'll be literally no signatures and polling.
Inside that area?
Yeah.
Inside that
So
buffer zone? Yep.
here during early voting for primary and then in November. And then I wrote down my notes because I was concerned that I wouldn't remember what I wanted to say. So I gave Doug the axe votes so that you could see, and so based on the new axe vote, the clerks are now required to come before you to proceed with a vote to enable the clerks in conjunction with the police chief to make an informative decision as to the coverage of poll worker appointments and police officers at our upcoming state primary election. I recommend to the Board of Selectmen, per the recently passed act, to assign the police officer to each polling location for all elections in 2022. Furthermore, I recommend that the Board of Selectmen designate the police chief the authority to assign specific police officers according to scheduling and availability. As stated in the act, if there's not enough poll workers appointed by you, the clerk will have the ability to fill in the vacancies by appointing competent people, which I will have trained by the election work. You know, I don't want to call them seasoned election workers, but they will jump in and train the people.
So, Liza, does that include the early voting? So would there have to be a police officer present?
I actually reached out to the administrative assistant and talked to the chief regarding early voting. And while it is not required by the state, I did ask him to be aware that we are having early voting, and maybe somebody could, you know, we're not required to have a police officer here, but if he could please be aware that we are having early voting.
And you guys have worked out the logistics otherwise?
We always do.
You always do, absolutely. So, okay. So you're asking us to approve that and make the chief the designated authority?
Correct. While I'm required to come before you to appoint that, I'm asking you to give that duty to the chief as in past practice.
I'll entertain a motion to assign that duty to the chief.
So moved.
A motion, we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay.
Yep.
Jerry?
Would it make more sense if the issues your current voting of poll workers list? Some of these people have been doing it since birth, and they just know what to do. If you 5 people appoint brand new people, there's gonna be a big learning curve.
Well, this was the assigning of a of police officers to the.
And election
and the
workers.
election
You'll
workers.
see
But
my
that's
list.
that's through coordination with you.
Correct,
I'd
but
assume.
but I need your approval to appoint that list that I gave you.
You just
Yep.
got it.
Yeah, we just
Yes,
gave
I
that,
coordinate them,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Yep.
That's what we just gave, but.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Keep going, yep.
That's all I have.
Oh, that's it? Okay, I thought you were going through it. All right. All right, anybody have any questions for Liza? Donna, you got anything? You want to keep her in the hot seat any longer?
I was just going to ask, did you intend to have us vote on the warrant?
I gave it to Susan for signature.
Okay.
I saw it this morning. It should be in a folder somewhere for signature.
Okay. Yep.
And then I'll have the constable bring that around.
Perfect.
Anybody else?
I just want to keep Liza on the hot seat for one more minute because I know how much she loves it. Liza, you're good. And I know Donna knows this better than anybody here, as she was the former clerk, but I just want to let the whole community know what a fantastic job Liza's doing. As evidenced by the Votes Act that she just talked about, there's tremendous changes that the state is imposing, more work, unfunded mandates, and it's all like new ground that Liza's having to figure out how to handle, and she does an exceptional job, and she's extremely cooperative with every other department and with all the external customers she has. So I just want to give her some public kudos for a job well done. And
Thank you.
I know she'll kill me tomorrow for saying this, but I just wanted to say it out loud. So thank you.
Now she's really ready. Mission accomplished. Good. Thanks,
you,
Donna.
Liza.
Good job.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Liza. All right, next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated?
I have none.
Okay. Next, old business, national opioid settlement funding update.
Thank you, Mike. So this will be a quick update. We've talked about the opioid settlements for a while, but I did want to let the board and the public know that we have received the first cash distribution from the first settlement that's been worked out as part of the national consortium that we're in, as well as in conjunction with the state's attorneys general. So our first payment was $22,263. I believe we'll be getting this annual payment for approximately 18 years. There will be other settlements coming down the pike too, so there should be more money coming as well. But for this first settlement, it's an annual payment of over $22,000. I included in your packet a bulletin from the Department of Revenue that's like 3 pages long, explaining some of the municipal accounting for how we have to handle these funds. And sort of the long and the short of it is, it just goes to the general fund. There's no mechanism right now to segregate it. And use of this funds require us to go to town meeting to have an appropriation. But there is discussion in the legislature about amending Mass General Law to allow us to be able to segregate it. I've talked to the town accountant about it, and what I'd like to recommend is we basically do nothing for now. You know, we're not having a special town meeting coming up, so there's no urgency. Let's see if the state is going to, you know, change the laws to allow us to segregate it. If they don't, my recommendation is going to be at our annual town meeting to set up a special purpose stabilization fund. So we will take the money out of the general fund, put it into that fund along with any new settlement funds, so we keep it separate, we keep it distinct, and then we can appropriate it out for opioid-related purposes, and it doesn't just get lost in the general fund. Our assistant town administrator, Jen Constable, is going to lead a working group with the police chief, the fire chief, Board of Health, and any other stakeholders that are important to come up with some recommendations for exactly how we'd spend the funding, but we'll have plenty of time to work that out. So that's the update.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments on it? Okay. Thank you, Deb. Next, under old business, sewer update, EPA administrative order and follow-up. Town Council John Clifford. John?
Good evening.
Jeff.
Hi, John. How are you?
On July 14th, the EPA issued the town an order, findings of violations and an order for compliance for our sewer department. And that order was actually the product of months' worth of discussions with EPA, our sewer officials, town officials. I will say that the EPA was tremendously cooperative and understanding before they issued the order. The order really puts forth a lot of burden on the town, but the order is based on the fact that the town didn't comply with orders that we were under going back to 2006. So we haven't operated our sewer system in compliance with state DEP regulations and federal EPA regulations. So this order is basically the next level up, that we have to get in compliance. We have to get our sewer operation up to standard, and there's a lot of different issues that have been discussed at a lot of meetings. But there were very specific deadlines that were included in the order, and the first deadline was for August 1st, where we had to submit a plan for infiltration and inflow. And candidly, there was a lot of last-minute scrambling on August 1st to comply with that. I will say that it would not have served the town's interests to have missed the very first deadline in that order. But we did, with a lot of help. Chris Kenny from my office, Doug was very involved, and Dave Taylor did a lot of work. There's a lot of work ongoing in the sewer department, and the sewer commissioners are undertaking a lot of different activities. The reason that we almost missed the deadline is because we really hadn't coordinated to the degree that we needed to. We have new deadlines. Even more complex work has to be done coming up for September 1st. So we're literally a couple of weeks away from the next critical deadline, and we have to make sure that we hit that deadline and we hit all the subsequent deadlines. So I think there's a lot of effort being made by the sewer commissioners, a lot of effort certainly being made by Dave Taylor. We've engaged a number of engineering firms that are working on this, because it's issues with the plant, it's issues with infiltration and inflow in the street. There's a lot of different problems. But I think we really need a much more comprehensive and organized approach to stay on top of this.
So if we propose something of a working group that tracks whatever dates, whatever deadlines are coming up, and just make sure that the sewer, department is in line to hit those deadlines. If we made it up of, obviously, maybe a sewer commissioner, a member of the Board of Selectmen, yourself, town council, as obviously overseeing it, but something in that manner where it's being talked about, but it's not being talked about in a manner where there's a quorum required and votes are being taken. It's just an oversight so that you can look at it and know what's coming down the line, so that we don't run into a scenario where we miss a deadline. Because as we've stated before, the EPA was very good to us in not issuing a fine this time around. Missing a deadline will surely generate some sort of fine, and I don't see it as being an option based on the goodwill that we've lost with them over the 16 years of noncompliance. So I don't know if maybe I'll reach out to Chuck tomorrow and have a quick conversation with him. I don't think it's anything that needs to be voted necessarily, but I think if we kind of put that out there and they can decide who they want to send up as part of the working group, and I think or you being the liaison, if you're willing to take that on.
I will volunteer for that gladly.
If anybody has any issues with that, but just so that we can stay organized and keep a running tally of what's coming up and what needs to be done.
Can I jump in on that point, if you guys don't mind? I would add, and I think you probably meant this, Mike.
Jen too.
Yeah, I was going to say I would add Jen and make sure Dave
that.
Taylor is obviously
Dave Taylor as well, of course.
And I think maybe for the public's sake, 'cause I think we all know this, but so the public understands, obviously in our charter, this elected sewer commissioners are responsible for the sewer department. But the issue is the EPA and the federal government doesn't care about our town charter. When these orders come and the letters come, they come to me because I'm representing the town. Right? The feds look at the town, not just an individual department. So I think what you're describing will be very helpful so that we're all coordinated, and it's so we can help.
Well, I think it's our responsibility up here to protect the town, and to protect the town from being fined or being sued. And obviously it's not our call per se on how things are getting done down there, but it's certainly our right to be a part of the process and make sure that we don't end up being fined. So I think if we can put together a working group very quickly before the end of this week is out and stay on top of it, and we can get a spreadsheet together, somebody can go through the document and highlight every deadline that's in there and what needs to be done, and then really coordinate next level coordination with Dave Taylor and then the sewer commissioners. I think that might be something that's helpful anyway.
Agreed.
So, sorry, John, I cut you off.
No, I completely agree. The town is the party, and the sewer commissioners are doing a tremendous amount of work, and so is Dave Taylor. But the funding is gonna go way beyond what the sewer department generates for revenue. There's already been a lot of discussion about using town funding to support those activities, ARPA funds, those kinds of things. So once we start involving other sources of funding, then there has to be involvement through this office, that kind of coordination. So I think it's just support. I mean, the only working staff from the sewer department are Dave Taylor, and we have one administrative person, that's it.
Yeah.
We don't have a big staff down there, so I think that kind of support will be helpful.
You know, I think, and to that point, we all ran to be members of the Board of Selectmen. None of us ran to be sewer commissioners, and we don't want to be sewer commissioners, and we don't want to have to, you know, take over in that position at all. I'll defer to them every day of the week, but in this case where it's an EPA order and there's potential litigation involved, you know, I want to make sure, you know, if we just sit back, you know, sitting on our hands and don't do anything and have no coordination with that department, I think this is a step forward for us to really make sure these deadlines are met, and another opportunity for us to protect the town from any kind of lawsuit. So, okay.
I'd like to add one point, and John just brought it up, and it's a good one, which is other sources of funding. So with that first deadline that we met, where we had, on August 1st, we have to explain how we're going to be funding certain improvements to fix the I&I issues. I want to refer to, if you go into your packet, the end of the sewer tab, which I think is tab G. The very last page is the ARPA funding spreadsheet, which I've been updating periodically. So this is, you'll see the date on there is August 2nd. This was a previous version that I'd shared with you, and if you go under water and sewer, you'll see that I had a $500,000 amount for I&I, and it wasn't carried over into either of the columns on the right because we weren't committing to it yet, but I said, heads up, we might need this if the EPA order requires it. As John just described, we're going to have to do this because the sewer department doesn't have an extra $500,000 to be able to do that. So I'm going to carry that $500,000 over to that right-hand column under the county ARPA funds. And I mean, this is obviously not something that's sustainable. ARPA is a limited one-time grant, and there's a lot more funding that's going to have to be generated to make more improvements, and there's a rate study, there's going to have to be sewer rate increases, but to meet the imminent deadlines, make the repairs we have to do now, I think it's critical that we commit to this $500,000 in additional ARPA funds above and beyond the $515,000 in ARPA funds that we already promised for the digester boiler replacement.
And I will say, you know, almost missing the August 1st deadline, I think was just a product of not really, I guess, understanding exactly what it was, what could be part of the plan. And part of the plan might be that something's going out to bid. You don't have to have all the bids necessarily at the time. So, so I think it was just confusion in that sense. But I have been watching, I watch all the sewer department meetings, and they have done, you know, to John's point, they've done a good job of really getting themselves organized and, you know, coming up with a plan. You know, they seem to have a better handle on the numbers that drive the department, where the funds come from. They seem to know exactly where they are on I&I and how they're going to pay for the things. And I think they've worked pretty well with Dave Taylor to this point, especially as of late, to really kind of coordinate. I know that they've been doing a lot of work, some workshop, you know, some smaller work group meetings, and you know, hopefully, you know, they see this as, you know, not Big Brother, you know, looking over their shoulder, but just, you know, it's our responsibility to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a position where we're sued. And, you know, I think it's important that we be, you know, willing participants and help them along the way, as they've asked us to do over the years. So.
Yeah. Right. So also, you know, I mean, Doug has like an eagle's eye view of the entire budget. So if he's there at the committee and they're like, where are we going to get these funds? He could say, oh, I could squeeze a little out of here and we can make it come together. So you can get answers right away for where else to get the money within our budget. And of course, I'm diligently working on outside donations for the sewer as well.
So I don't think we need any kind of a vote on that. I think it's just something that we just move forward, and I'll give Chuck a call in the morning and just ask him to, you know, appoint somebody from his commission. John, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks,
okay.
John.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Stick around. All right, next on the agenda, other old business not reasonably anticipated.
I've none.
Okay. Okay, so next on the agenda is police chief interviews. We have Sergeant Rick Novio, Lieutenant Brian Copley and Lieutenants Nick Zioli. So with that said, this process is obviously something that's been going on for a while, and it's been triggered by the fact that our current chief will be turning 65 in September, and due to Massachusetts law is police chiefs retire at 65. So the interview process will start off with Sergeant Novio, but each person, I just remind everybody that whatever questions you ask one person, you have to ask each individual. So so just keep that in mind and kind of keep track as you go with each candidate. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to add a couple of things before we start. This is obviously a critically important appointment and decision for the whole community. And it's obviously bittersweet because we all think Chief Llewellyn's done a fantastic job, and we're sad to see him go, although we're happy for him with moving on to this next phase of his life. But it's also, I have to say, this has been a really great experience just for me personally, because we have 3 fantastic candidates. They're all internal. They're all excellent. They could all do the job, in my opinion. So what's going to be difficult is choosing who's the most qualified, who the best person is. We're following all the best practices. The chief helped coordinate getting an independent assessment center to come in. You all have those reports, all the different categories of assessments and the rankings and the scores. In addition to the assessment center, I conducted a private interview, which we included the HR director and the assistant town administrator with all 3 candidates. Again, very impressed with all 3. So I won't give you my input yet. We'll let you guys do your thing, and I can share my input at the end. But again, I just wanted to just publicly state how impressed all 3 of us were with all 3 of these candidates, and that the chief has run a department over time, putting the right people in the right place where we have outstanding internal candidates that can do the job. So I'm excited. Can't make a wrong decision tonight.
Okay. So without further ado, Sergeant Novio, come on up. Welcome, Rick.
Good evening.
Okay. So we'll start off with Rory. Any questions?
Sure. Hi. How are you?
Excellent.
Congratulations for being a candidate, by the way.
Thank you.
I guess I'll start out with a biggie. Right now is like a crescendo moment for policing in America. There have been necessary changes and unforeseen challenges. Considering platforms like race, mental health, and the political divide, in your opinion, what are the absolute musts for an officer's continuing education?
Continuing education, we first of all, we have in-service every year where we're required to go to the academy and get retrained.
Mm-hmm.
We have had the opportunity through the Chief Llewellyn to get additional training in de-escalation and some bias training also. So I would like to obviously try to improve on that.
Mm-hmm.
As a basis, I'd love to see all of our officers have some college education, at least an associate's degree. We implement that over time, depending on our contractual going on. But it's in utmost importance to continue our bias training, our use of force and de-escalation training, going forth with how reform and posts are working with us right now.
Thanks.
Thank you. Donna?
What's your view of the current morale at the police station?
Morale isn't bad. It can definitely be improved on.
Okay.
This whole process has weighed on the whole police department. We haven't known which direction we're going in.
Yep.
And from top to bottom, it is weighing on everybody. And once we get this part done, I'm sure it's going to work on healing and getting better.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Hello. Could you please summarize your experience and why you would like to be chief, and what attributes from that experience you find will help you do the job that you would like to do?
Okay. I'm going to go on some time. I started off, I went to Norwich University, Military College in Vermont. Through there, As a cadet, I attained the rank of first lieutenant and was upper class platoon leader, and had responsibilities and duties because of that. I was also appointed to an honor society within the school, which we met with the president and the commandant regularly to instill the standards of the school, make sure everybody was abiding by those. After that, within 6 months after graduating, or less than a year from graduating, got hired with a trial court in Massachusetts, and after 3 years there, I became an assistant chief, where I oversaw 10 court officers, up to 10 court officers. We had 6 or 7 trial courts, plus a jury session, a probation office, a clerk's office. It was all under my responsibility. Through that, I became a special police officer in Braintree early on. After that, I became an auxiliary here in Rockland, where I volunteered through numerous hours. Excuse me. After that, I got hired as a permanent admittant for 2 years before I became full-time here. Within a couple of years of being here, I got onto the special response team, which was a highly coveted position at that point, where I got a lot of training for warrants and how to deal with different situations. From that, I think it was next. I attained the position of field training officer, which probably was one of the most important jobs I had at the police department. I trained new officers, trained them in our policies and procedures, how we did things, how to act, and got to mold these newer guys into being the better police officers that we have today. Soon after that, or a few years after that, I got into the detective's office, and another job which I really loved. We worked as a group. I worked independently, did many investigations, whether it be sexual assaults, drugs, any other financial crimes. With that, I was there for approximately 4 years before I got promoted to sergeant. I've been sergeant for 5 years now. I've been in command of some major incidents in town, shootings, stabbings, different things like that. We had one crowd control event we had here, which I assisted with. While with the Rockland Police Department, I was also allowed to be a part of the Metrolec SWAT team. Through that, I got numerous hours of training. Many different events, including the Boston Marathon bombing, the shootout in Watertown. Responding to all that was part of that whole incident. During that, with all the training in there, I also got put onto the Special Services team, which we do all the planning for warrants, special events, parades in different towns. So I now got to go on not just the operations side, but the planning side of this. So through all of that, cumulatively, I believe that I have I've had a lot of experience in commanding different events, commanding different people, overseeing day-to-day operations of the police department, and I'd love to be chief. Throughout my whole career, I just wanted to be the best I can be at whatever I can do. And when this opportunity arose, I wanted to be it, and be able to bring the police department. It's great now, bring it to another level, and that's why.
Thank you.
Kara?
As chief, what would be your 5-year plan for the department?
Okay, so as I said before, we have actually the history of the police department. When I first got on, we had a lot of budget problems. Through the few years, the chief and the deputy have worked through that, so we don't have those issues anymore as much as we did back then. There's always budget problems. Thank you, sir. Excuse me. Now I'd like to get back to some of the basics. I'd like to get back into some community policing type events where we can get we have the Citizens Police Academy in the past. I'd like to get back into that. Install maybe a junior police academy, start working with the youth of the community, get them involved with the police department so they're not afraid of us. I would, we're looking, you know, obviously for the staffing. We'd like to improve the staffing at the police department. We have to refill some of the specialist positions that have gone due to the budgetary problems. Yeah, basically that. We need to get back to where we were before with the community policing end of it. And like I said, since I've been out of detectives, we haven't had a third detective, so I'd love to get that back involved and serve the town the best we can.
Thank you.
All right, Sergeant, you've been in the department for a number of years, as you stated, and you've worked alongside some of the other officers, as colleagues, and in some cases, maybe even as a partner at one point. How difficult will it be for you to transition into a leadership role and hold those officers accountable?
I don't see any difficulty at all. Already coming from patrol into sergeant, whatever issues, it's a learning experience. Mm-hmm. And I was able to work through that. I had an opportunity in 2011 to become a provisional sergeant. So that was an 8-month long process where we had some, at that time, some older, salty, and that was a huge learning process for me.
I bet.
So the second time around, it was a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And honestly, I believe in in leading by example, and I believe the officers see that in me. I don't ask them to do anything I haven't done or would do at that moment. So I don't see any issues leading anybody.
Okay. Okay. Rory?
Yeah, what's the next step in your own professional development and why, as far as training and classes?
For training classes?
Mm-hmm.
I've been eyeing some executive training. There are a few that are like a 10-month long process. Mm-hmm. Of, I think there's a 1 week per month for 10 months. And that's one I definitely want to get into. Mm-hmm. I definitely need to get into more of the professional development. I've done the FBI leader school, which is the executive, the command, and the supervisor, which has helped me a ton. Yep. Those are great classes. I, as well as the chief and deputy, we believe in education and training. Yep. You never can have too much. Mm-hmm. You never stop learning. And whatever I can get my hands on that will best help me and the department and the town is what I'm looking for.
Cool. Okay.
Donna?
Can you discuss any experience that you've had in assisting with preparation of a budget?
Of a budget?
Yep.
In my position as a sergeant, I do not have much budgetary experience, but I do make proposals. Okay. I have made proposals. I was part of the, back in 2006, I was part of the, a group that we were able to implement the tasers. So I was one of the original taser instructors. We pitched it to Chief Dunn at the time, and he actually bought into it. And we were one of the first towns in the South Shore to get that. And we had to find funding for the tasers, which were expensive at that time, and we were able to find a source to get the tasers. So we were that I found. We were able to put the rifle program together later on in my career, and we're trying right now to fund the new tasers.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
Could you please describe your philosophy on discipline within the department, and then in turn what your approach would be?
In discipline, you mean?
If one of your officers, or if there was any sort of incident that needed your guidance or your... Okay.
So, I mean, as is now, as a sergeant, as frontline supervisor, I do install discipline. I'm evaluate each officer. If there's any codes or policies they do not, that they break or do not follow, I need to report up. It starts with a verbal. It depends on, whether it's a minor or major infraction. Minor infractions, it's a verbal. If I need to continue to talk to somebody about the same thing, it becomes a writing and written, and pushed up the chain of command. It depends. Every situation is different, and it's going to be dealt with differently. But I am, as a rule follower myself, I expect everybody to follow rules. I don't want, and that's where morale goes bad. If we let people get away with stuff, the guys who do a great job, see that and ask why. So my thing would, I would make sure that everybody's following the same rules and held accountable for the same things.
Thank you.
Kara?
As you know, our department does not currently use body-worn cameras. What are your thoughts on body-worn cameras?
Well, I have no problem with them. The problem is the funding. The funding of the cameras themselves and the storage space. We have found that, our studies have found that the cameras have actually helped the police officers more than they've been seen to be against the police officers. From dealing with some towns in the state who do wear them, they're very positive about that also. They're saying that people actually, when they know they're on camera, they act better. So I'm a proponent for it. I'd like to see it happen.
Great, thank you.
Describe your experience in interacting with the press. Have you any experience with putting together, holding a press conference or writing a press release?
Other than having it in a class, back in my court days, I've dealt with the press a lot. At the Rockland Police Department, we have our chain of command, and nobody speaks to the press without the express written consent of the chief or his designee.
Yep. Okay. Rory?
Yeah, what's going on in Rockland right now? Like, what's the #1 crime concern in your opinion, and what are your ideas to address it?
Our #1 concern, maybe not in the crime end of it, but is mental health. Mental health is huge right now. I don't know the percent of calls, but it seems like at least 75% of the calls we go on are mental health related. That is something that I'd love to see more training in, and possibly if we can acquire a grant or somehow get a clinician to accompany us on some calls to help us out, that would be great. In terms of crime, we do have drugs. There's still a drug. It's not the drug issue that was around 6-7 years ago with the heroin and other opiates, but we still have a lot of issues going on that we need to try to get a hold of. I mean, right now it seems that meth is out there more than it was the opiates at one point. And any computer-related crimes are still on the rise. And, we'd like to see guys get more training on that also.
Thanks.
What's your opinion of the current relationship between the police department and the fire department?
I don't see any issues at all.
Okay.
I have a very close relationship with Deputy Chief Haney in particular. I have a lot of respect for Chief Duffy. The guys within the fire department we work with regularly, the officers and the paramedics and firefighters. I think we work very well together.
Excellent. Thank you.
What is your current relationship with the Superiors Union? If you became chief, what would you think your relationship would be with the union, and how often would you need to meet with them?
Well, you know what, it seems the chief probably could talk about this better than I could, but we don't have those issues where union and management butt heads all the time. We don't seem to have those at all. Obviously there are going to be times that we need to speak and try to mediate issues, but that's not something that I'd see a problem with. Something we can talk through and try to find a common ground. In the future, if I was become chief, I would have regular meetings. Yes, I mean it's as I would with everybody, and try to work out whatever issues we have.
Thank you.
Kara?
What is your knowledge and understanding of police reform in the Post Commission, and how will it affect the department?
Okay, well, I have some training in it. We've gone to classes. I read up on it. I know that we do have one of our lieutenants' main consideration and job is posting reform and implementing it in the department, and that will go hand in hand with accreditation. A lot of them the same issues going forward, and honestly, again, our department doesn't have a lot of issues that are going to be problems with post or reform. Going forward, it would just make sure we adhere to all their rules and regulations, and it's mainly just what information we have to provide to them, and doing that regularly.
Thank you.
Can you outline your experience as it pertains to the hiring process within the police department? What type of attributes, skills, experience would you look for when hiring a police officer if you become chief? And if you don't necessarily have that experience within the Rockland Police Department, you can speak to your experience in the court system or any other place where you might have been a supervisor or.
Okay, we've, with civil service now, people take a test, we get a list. Going forward, what I'd love to see is see us get out there a little bit more. I don't have a lot of experience myself in the hiring process. I've talked to younger people that have taken the test, try to get them to do the right things to get hired on a job. Going forward, I'd like to see implement different, whether it be social media, trying to attract more officers, different officers, the school system, our school resource officer, maybe pick out some kids we can try to mentor them and try to bring them along. Go to colleges, do job fairs. We need to really get out there a lot more. The applicant pool isn't as big as it used to be, and we can't be as picky as we were. We have to go out there and actively find the guys and gals that we want.
Now, what do you consider to be important attributes? What would you look for in a police officer?
Honesty. Honesty, being able to roll with it, be able to bend, not be so rigid. Those are the main things. But if we have someone, we pick the right people with the right attributes with it. Like I said, it all integrity, honesty are the mainstays of the police. If we cannot have that, they do not belong in our department.
Perfect. Lori?
Yeah, I often see Chief Llewellyn out in the streets, either on duty or interacting with residents, or I don't know if you just like riding your motorcycle a lot, but it looks like fun. What are your thoughts about the higher-ups in the police department doing street time, if you will, to have skin in the game and keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the community?
Well, I think it's almost important. It's in order to adequately represent the department to whether it be the businesses in town, the different organizations in town, you'd have to have face-to-face meetings and just see what's going on with them, what their concerns are, what their problems are. Absolutely, we're going to put officers out there, and officers are going to do that. They do that. But I think it's important, also for the head of the snake to be out there and doing the same type of thing. And I'm very much a hands-on type person, and I like talking to people and trying to get the feel of it and try to solve problems. And I would definitely be out in the public, and I'd like to see everybody that I could and try to do the best we can for the town.
Thanks.
On a personal note, what do you see as the greatest issue facing law enforcement today?
Hiring and retaining officers. We are having problems getting, as we said before, getting officers to take the test, or getting the qualified officers to take the test. Where we used to be able to, we used to turn down some really good people. Now we're taking only the best we can, and and at some points, I've heard for the state police through their hiring process, they're taking people they never would have thought of before. So that is what my major fight would be for is to hire the right guys. Right?
Great. Thank you.
Tiffany?
Could you please describe a difficult situation that you encountered with another individual or department, how you handled it, and what you learned from it? And then how would you describe your relationship with either that person or department today?
Okay. Going back, when Dave Taylor first took over, he would he didn't realize or didn't request police officers for details that sometimes we really need. They would have roads that were, you know, impassable or down to one lane or issues like that. There was one day on Central Street, the whole street was closed down. I believe we had one officer out there, and they hit a gas main and caused a huge issue. So we had a conversation about that, and we ended up working things through. He had some very good points, and I did too, and we came to a common agreement. And Dave and I are friends. Dave and I are friends now. At that point, I barely knew him. We are friends now. We talk regularly and see each other. We're on the job all the time, and we get along great.
Thank you.
Kara?
Can you tell us about your experience or ability to work with other professionals within the community?
In the community? I'm trying to think of the businesses that I will go to. I know many of the business owners. I know and I get along great with. The different
Can be departments as well.
departments. That's park department, the highway department, the fire department. We do some work with the youth commission. I enjoy working with all these different departments, honestly. And we've done the Allison active shooter training with the youth department and youth commission in the town hall. It's great being able to see other people, being able to help them out, answer their questions, be there for them, and see how we can best actually help them out.
Thank you.
Okay, and this might be, difficult for you to answer with the chief sitting in the room and with Jerry sitting back there, but are there any areas within the department that you feel need improvement or change? And if so, how would you go about implementing those changes? And they won't take offense, so by all means, feel free to answer honestly.
Okay, gloves off. No.
Gloves off completely.
Like I said earlier, and I'm not just saying this because they're here. We had our problems back when the chief first came in. The budget we had no money to work with. We were going down to 2 men on the road. We had a lot of issues. We built our way back up there, and like I said before, that's it. What I'd love to see is I'd love to increase the staffing. The detective's office, they definitely need help. We don't have a traffic enforcement anymore. I'd like to get that back up and running. I'd love to improve, again, budget problems. More guys on the road, more officers on the road. I'd love to see that happen. It went to the point now with injuries and whatever else we have going on that we don't have enough guys that we feel that we can be proactive and not get caught with our pants down. Those are the main issues I see and what I'd like to improve on.
Lori?
Looking at your entire career, what was your most difficult professional challenge and how'd you handle it?
Well, my most difficult professional challenge was leaving the court to come to Rockland Police. At that point, I was making a lot more money at the court than a starting police officer made. It was definitely a comfortable job. I enjoyed it. It was very active where I was, so it wasn't a really sit-back job. But the policing was in my blood. It's in my family blood, and it was definitely difficult making that step, just as anyone would
Donna?
I actually don't have any other questions, but I would like to thank you for your answers and your time.
Thank you very much.
Tiffany?
Could you tell me your greatest career achievement?
Well, getting promoted to a sergeant so far. You know, I've had a lot of great things I've done through the police department. You know, we did some great cases and helped a lot of people in the detective unit. Every day on the street, we do some good things and be able to solve problems for people. You know, how long has it been? Over 15 years on the SWAT team. You know, I've done a lot, which has made me feel good. And it's funny, I'm more nervous here than I am kicking someone's door in that has guns.
It's just a conversation. We're just talking.
It's easy for you to say that.
Okay, it's tough up here too sometimes. Okay, thank you. Kara?
I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but what is your approach to community policing?
We need to get out there. We need to get out there. You know, it's so important. We find that officers who do have regular conversations out there, they get a lot of great information also. Not only are they helping people, getting to know the community, but they're also getting great information on, you know, who the troublemakers are, who needs help, where the drugs are, where the weapons are, stuff. Those are great. So community policing is so many different ways. It works out great for us, and I want to really increase that. We do have a bike patrol unit. We can get back out there once we have the staffing levels appropriate, and we have the walking beats in the center of town, which were great. You get to get out here and talk to people and find out a lot of issues that's been going on. And like I said before, when I first started back in the 90s, we had community policing grants, and we were down in the schools. We were at the teen center. We were doing those things, and they were great back then. And hopefully we can get back to those.
Thank you.
So you touched obviously on community policing, and if the budget existed, so let's assume we're working in a perfect world in a budgetary sense, but you know, Rockland's a community that's been devastated by the opioid epidemic over the years. What are your plans to prevent similar epidemics from happening? You know, we've had the DARE program in place for a lot of years, and a lot of the people that have passed away recently have gone through DARE. Right. What else can be done in order to really drive that point home to hit it off before it becomes a problem?
More boots on the road, you know, and I said before, and not to beat the dead horse, but that detectives, they can get in with the DEA has a task force, which a lot of towns can put an officer in, and they actually get a lot more training. They can really, between they have different electronics, all kinds of toys they can use to find out where the drugs are coming in, and work with all these different towns and task force in order to find out more of that.
Lori, anything else?
What are your top 3 initial issues, should you get the position, that you want to address?
Staffing, and
okay.
All
right.
Budget, obviously budgetary problems. The department is in a good, physically the department is in a good place. The cruisers are in a great place right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it just leaves from here is staffing. And you know, like I said before, we do have issues with officers out injured and issues like that, and trying to rehire people. Putting people in the academy. We'll get one officer coming out soon. Hopefully we can get a few more in. Mm-hmm. And once we get everybody up to speed, maybe we can get there.
Mm-hmm. Would you entertain not being part of civil service anymore?
That's whatever is handed to me, I'll do it. We can make it work. We can make it work either way. It's
okay. All right. Thanks.
Tiffany?
I'm all set.
You're all set. Kara?
Thank you.
Okay. Just a couple more. What would you do if, God forbid, one of your officers committed a crime?
Committed a crime?
Mm-hmm.
We don't stand for that. It's, that grounds for termination, depending on what happened, absolutely. If we cannot have the public's trust in having an officer who is a criminal, dirty, we can't have that out of the department. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Okay, and my last one. Anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself that you think would help us make our decision?
Well, I'm pretty much down there on paper. I'm just, I'm not quite the talker that the chief is.
You're doing fine. Nobody is. Nobody is.
As you can tell, but my heart's in it.
Yeah.
My heart, my dedication, my integrity, my honesty. That's what I have. I put everything into it. Probably, if you ask my wife, probably too much. You know, my phone's ringing at all times of day and night, and anybody has a question, they call me. I would do anything for anybody in this department or this town to make it work right. That's just here for the right things. I'm a down to earth cop, and that's what I want to be, and I want to lead the department like that.
Sergeant Novio, thank you very much for your interest in the position. Regardless of whatever comes out tonight, you know, I'm very, very confident and proud of the fact that you'll be with us in a leadership position in the Rockland Police Department for a long time to come, and continue doing what you do and sit back and the pressure's off you.
Yeah.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sergeant.
you very
for your
much.
time. I appreciate it.
Hi, Lieutenant.
Lieutenant Coakley, thank you for joining us. We're going to go right into it with some questions. And, you know, like I've said, it's a conversation. Don't feel any nervousness. Lori, let's start it off.
Sure. Do we have to go in the same order?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
You
all
can
right.
mix it up if you want, but just make sure you ask it.
I will,
Yep.
I will, okay. What's going on in Rockland? Like, what's the number one crime issue that you feel needs addressing, and how would you address it?
Number one crime issue is probably more of a, not so much a crime as the opioid epidemic that's going on right now. We are facing that almost on a daily basis. We're responding to overdose calls.
Yep.
That is, I think, the number one issue that we're facing right now.
Do you have any ideas on how to address it?
I think our biggest tool that we have right now is the Rockland Cares program. I think that's a great program. We do have one officer involved in that program right now.
Okay.
I'd like to see that expanded to maybe even a second officer or a larger role, or just a larger participation from the police department in that program itself.
Okay.
I've had many conversations with Officer Brian McDonald, and you know, and the work he does behind the scenes is a lot for one person to do full-time, never mind doing it part-time with the additional duties that he has.
Right. Yeah. It's tremendous what he does.
He does a great
actually.
job.
Yeah. Thanks.
John?
What's your view of the current morale at the police department?
Morale is low for many reasons. One of the reasons is this is going to create openings, so movement. I think there are officers that are motivated, that want to move up, that just haven't had the opportunity. With the chief leaving and somebody moving up, that's going to create opportunities for them. I think that's going to be very positive. Also, there are some issues as far as communication. They don't feel that maybe communication is as good as it needs to be, whether it be upward communication or downward communication. we don't seem to have a problem with downward communication so much. If someone does something, we send that right down the lines. Our upward communication, I think, could use some improvement, where the officers maybe don't feel as comfortable sending information up the chain of command.
Okay.
So that would be one of the things that I think would definitely increase morale.
Okay.
Tiffany?
Hello.
Hello.
Could you please describe your experience and why you're interested in becoming chief, and then what attributes from your experiences would help you be the chief that you would like to be?
Sure. I was hired by the Rockland Police Department in 1996. I started as a dispatcher and a part-time officer. I was hired full-time in 2000, and since that time I've always tried to get all different aspects of the police department, whether it be a mountain bike, whether it be a member of the SWAT team, a member of I was one of our field training officers. I was a member of our honor guard. When Sergeant Wayne Jackson retired about 10 years ago, I took over as commanding officer of the honor guard. Through doing that, I developed a lot of leadership skills. I was in charge of a 14-person unit, tasked with scheduling events, making sure we had proper training, proper equipment. So those are some of the things. I've been the DARE officer for the past 10 years, again, taking another aspect of the police department to try to get as much knowledge as I could. Through that, I was able to build relationships with the school, which more than just the teachers. I'm dealing with the teachers, I'm dealing with the administration, I'm dealing with the principals, I'm dealing with scheduling. I'm trying to fit 75 kids into a 45-minute class, so it's a lot of partnership. I couldn't do it by myself. It's a give and take. It's sitting down with them, coming up with a schedule, being flexible, and kind of just working out the problems. I became a patrol sergeant about 10 years ago. While doing that, I've gained great leadership skills as far as managing people. It's more than the differentiation between a supervisor and a leader. I see that never more and from the sergeant's position. Supervisor tells people what to do. A leader inspires people to do it. So I don't really have to, as a supervisor, it's okay, go do this because I'm your boss and I told you to do it. As a leader, it's this is our goal, this is how we get there, this is why we get there, and then they want to do it. They want to, when you give them a task, they want to complete it because they understand it and they buy into it. Most recently, approximately 6 months ago, I was promoted to the position of lieutenant. My current duties are on the administrative end. I'm making sure that our department is in line with our post standards, police officer standards and training. I also have been tasked with getting our department to a certification standard through a statewide standards as well as accreditation. Those are the things I'm currently working on. With the chief, we've developed a policy management system which gives us greater accountability for individual officers now. Before it was we put a policy out, make sure you read it. Now it's we put a policy out, it goes to the officer, and they digitally sign it, comes back to us, and now we know they read it. So that gives them the accountability that they know what they're supposed to do. There's no mixed messaging there.
Thank you.
Kara?
As chief, what would be your 5-year plan for the department?
I think a 5-year plan, you could probably break it down. I think the 1-year plan is immediately start building relationships. Build relationships with all the department heads. Again, there's nothing, as a chief of police, I'm not going to make change by myself. I'm going to need help from other people. Whether it's going to be my officers, it's going to be department heads, it's going to be representatives, senators, anyone. Community leaders, they all inspire change. They're going to have great ideas, they're going to bring it to me, but it's developing those relationships where they know that they can come to me, and I know that I can come to them. It's also going to be asking them, what do they need from me? What do they need from the police department? What do I have that I can help you with? And vice versa, what do you have that I might need from you that we haven't been getting? That would be the 1-year plan, is get those relationships, get them rock solid. Probably even stepping back from a 5-year would be a 3-year plan. In the 3-year plan, I want to build a bigger community policing presence. I would love to restart, that is the Citizens Police Academy. I still, to this day, will talk to people that went to that and say it was one of the best things they ever did. As things go, it just went by the wayside. It couldn't be done. That's definitely something I would bring back in a 3-year plan. As well as we are down a couple positions right now. We have a couple vacancies. I'd like to build our back into a full complement of officers where we can fill those vacancies that we have. We have 2 detectives. We're positioned for 3. We have a traffic enforcement officer that is vacant right now. We have a crime prevention officer that's vacant right now. So we're addressing those issues, but it's being done by the officers. There's no one person that we can count on and say, okay, this is your responsibility. I'd love to fill those. And my 5-year plan would be to make sure that we're accredited, that we're fully accredited police department. With that comes a lot of benefits. Number one would be money. It lowers our liability. It lowers our rating. Not only that, but it increases our accountability, because it says the state set certain standards and we're meeting, or in my case, I want to be exceeding those standards, and have everyone else be looking to Rockland and say, you know, the Rockland Police Department is the best police department around. That's where I want to go. When people are signing up to get certified and accredited, I want them to say, let's go to Rockland. They have the best policies there. They're the ones that are kind of the gold standard. So that would probably be my 5-year plan broken down into sections.
All right, thank you.
All right, Brian, you've been in the department for, what, 26 years, and you've worked alongside some of the other officers as colleagues and maybe some of them as partners. How difficult will it be to transition into being the chief and holding those officers accountable?
I don't see that as being a problem at all. I think your biggest jump is from patrolman to sergeant, because you're technically one of the guys as a patrolman and as a sergeant. You're now responsible for them. You're responsible for one of the tasks that we have for our sergeants is that they're responsible for the daily minor discipline infractions. As a lieutenant now, I'm more responsible for not only the minor, but now I'm dealing with the major discipline infractions as well. I don't see that as being a problem at all. The way I approach it is, I can't control other people's behaviors. They control their own behaviors, so whatever happens, I had nothing to do with it. They control their own actions.
Lori?
Yeah, across America, it's now a crescendo in policing in America, like the changes that are going on. There have been many necessary changes and unforeseen challenges. So considering platforms like mental health, race, the political divide, in your opinion, what are the absolute musts for an officer's continuing education, considering that stuff?
For the continuing education, every year we go to yearly in-service training. We have a 4-hour block that will deal with mental health crisis, that will deal with opioids. There are also specialty classes out there that we can and should be attending. De-escalation is also a big hot topic right now. I think that's probably right up there with the other 2. I think the best way to handle the opioid crisis, again, is education, is making sure that a Rockland Cares type of group, you can get education through them. Just helping them out, you're going to get education. I also think that with mental health, I'd like to see a social worker be available to us 24 hours a day. Right now, we don't have that, unfortunately. If we have a social crisis, we generally call the fire department. They come down, they'll help us do an initial evaluation. We have the ability to contact the hospital and then send the person to the hospital. But I think it would benefit us to have someone on call that can come out to the scene and help us on scene.
Yeah, would they be able to make it to the scene in time before that person's just taken away to the hospital? Is that a challenge?
I think what we would do is we would work out some type of arrangement. Time is never, or should never be an obstacle for us. Time's our friend. We want to take as much time as possible. We're set up where we have the officers available to us, and then we have surrounding towns if needed. So one of the things I would tell the officers is time is never an obstacle. Time, we have as much time as we need, especially in a mental health situation. I think talking to people really does calm them down if you communicate with them.
Cool, thanks.
Don?
Can you describe any experience you've had with preparing a budget?
You can ask my wife. I do my home budget pretty well. As far as the professional budget, I haven't had the experience with the professional budget, other than making myself knowledgeable. I'm aware of the Rockland Police Department budget. I know that it's approximately a little over $4 million. I know that 3.7 million of it is tied up in salaries and contractual obligations. That leaves about $300,000 to kind of run the department. So I'm aware of that. I am aware of the budget process as far as the executive review process, the legislative process, the execution and the auditing process, as far as that goes. But as far as making a large budget, I've never done that, but I don't see that as an obstacle.
Okay.
Tiffany?
You touched on your comfort level in terms of discipline, but could you tell me a little bit about your philosophy on discipline within the department and then your approach?
Sure. My philosophy is definitely progressive discipline. I think that anytime wrongdoing's happening, you need to make it aware to them immediately. Progressive discipline is, first time is a verbal warning, second time, well, not even second time, but the next instance could be a written warning. The next step would be possible suspension and then possible termination with different varying degrees depending on the severity of the crime, or the offense, I should say. But I wouldn't see any issues with discipline.
Kara?
As you know, Rockland does not currently use body-worn cameras. What are your thoughts on the use of body-worn cameras?
I'm in favor of body-worn cameras. I think that you need the proper policy to govern that, whether that be, it's going to include so many different things, the storage of the information. When does the body camera go on? When does the body camera go off? What do you do if someone turns it off intentionally? What do you do if it gets turned off accidentally? There are so many things that go with it. The idea behind it, I definitely agree with. I could possibly even see maybe starting with cruiser dash cameras and then moving into a body-worn camera. I do know that the cost is pretty high, and that would be one of the major limitations that I would see as far as body-worn cameras go.
Definitely. Thank you.
Can you describe any experience you might have interacting with the press? Have you ever held a press conference or written a press release?
I have not written a press release or held a press conference. I have I early on in my career, like everyone, I had a little bit of fear of maybe speaking in public, but through my experiences, through the DARE program, through the Honor Guard, through all of my experiences, I've kind of overcome that. I don't have any issues speaking. I do, when studying for the lieutenant's exam, that was one of the questions that I anticipated, so I did extensive research on that. I'm very comfortable with that issue.
Lori?
Yeah, in the span of your entire career, what was your most difficult professional challenge and how did you handle it?
My most difficult, and I wouldn't even say more challenging, was when I wanted to expand the Honor Guard. When I started, I believe it was 7 or 8 members. I wanted to expand it to 14. Takes a lot of funding. We didn't have that available. So I got together and I had a fundraiser. It was approximately six years ago. With that fundraiser, we raised about $9,000. We were able to outfit enough. We were able to raise enough funds to outfit those people, and I'm actually still utilizing that same monies today. That was probably my biggest challenge that I've had to overcome.
Donna?
What is your opinion of the current relationship between the police department and the fire department?
Me personally, I have a great relationship with everybody up at the fire department. I benefit from, I went to school with Chief Duffy. I knew him growing up, I knew the family. We've always gotten along well. I've gotten along with all the members of the fire department. In my career as a supervisor, I've had to negotiate a couple arguments between my officers and their officers, but they both times that I can think of right off the bat, it was just a misunderstanding. You know, they thought one thing, we thought another, and we were able to talk it out in no major issues. But I see us working together. We're both public safety. We're both looking for the same thing. Like I mentioned earlier, when we have issues, we call them, they come down. When they have issues, they call us, we come down. I've never had any issues with anybody down there, and I've never had any issues on my shift that I couldn't overcome.
Excellent.
With ease.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
Could you please describe a difficult situation that you encountered with another individual or department? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from it? And then how would you describe your relationship now with either that individual or department?
I did have an incident one time where one of the officers was what I would call insubordinate. He was having a bad day. He snapped at me in front of some other officers. I immediately, right there and then verbally just told him that that's not acceptable. I did follow up with him later on in that day. After a verbal conversation, I then had him come to my office. I did give him a written consultation, I would call it, not so much a discipline, more than just a why did this happen? What's going on? This is kind of out of the ordinary for you. This is not normal. Trying to get to the root cause of the problem. With that, after doing that, that same day, that same officer came back and apologized for the situation, explained, realized that it was wrong, that he was in the wrong, and from going forward on that, we didn't have any issues that dated back to that incident at all.
Kara?
You touched upon this topic a little bit, but what is your knowledge and understanding of police reform in the post-commission, and how will it affect the department?
One of my primary jobs is to make sure that we're in compliance with all the post standards. The post standards pretty much is police reform. The way I look at it is we're not doing much different. We've been complying with police reform way before police reform was in effect. Now we're just documenting it. Police reform says, okay, you need to de-escalate. Well, we've been de-escalating for years. We just never put a title on it. We didn't write it down and say, hey, this is, we de-escalated here. Instead, we said, we called for backup. We waited for him. We gave him the opportunity to call a friend. We did this. We did, we described all our actions, but we didn't use the term de-escalating. Post is more about making sure that you are within their parameters, and they want you to use words de-escalate. They want you to use, for mass demonstrations, one of their big ones is that they don't want, they want to make sure that you have a plan in effect before the problems happen. We've been doing that as well. We've always been doing that, we just haven't been saying it. So police reform is, maybe in other parts of the country, or even in the state, may be an issue. In Rockland, I don't see it as an issue. I think we've been doing it the entire time. Now we're just making sure that we're documenting it, and it is giving us some guidelines. Use of force standards. We've been, not only meeting those, but we've been below them, I think, in a good way.
Thank you.
Can you outline your experience with the hiring process within the police department, and what type of attributes, skills, and experience would you be looking for in a police officer if you become chief?
I was involved in the hiring of some permanent intermittent officers just through the interview process. Some of the things I'm looking for, I think the number one quality is integrity. I think that, but integrity encompasses so much. Integrity means you have to be honest, you have to be selfless, you have to be willing to put the needs and wants of other people ahead of your own. You need to have good communication skills. You need to be able to de-escalate a situation. The days of going in and saying, hey, stop doing that, I'm the police, I said so, don't work anymore. You have to go in, you have to build rapport with people, you have to let them tell you their side. Before it was like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. Now it's no, you need to hear everybody out, and you're still going to take whatever action you need to take to stop that situation. But you need to let the people have that feeling that they're being heard and that you're listening to them. So I think having those qualities, and maybe up there with integrity, is to be a team player. You can't have somebody that is not going to look at his or her actions and see how are they going to affect my team, my fellow officers, and more importantly, my department. How's this going to look to the town? How's this going to look when someone from the outside looks in? And those are things that people who are going to become police officers really need to focus on and have those qualities.
Thank you. Lori?
Thanks. What do you think are the most important issues, or what are your top 3 tasks the next chief we'll have to work on.
I mentioned earlier communication. I think improving communication is a big point that again, the upward communication is letting those officers know kind of almost the same way people are today. You know, people want to know that they'll be heard. Officers want to know that when they give a suggestion, it's heard. That, you know, it's not just, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Guys have great ideas. I mean, a lot of the positive ideas and aspects of the police department come from within the ranks.
Yep.
As a chief, I know that, again, I'm not making decisions and what I mean by that is, I'm taking information from everywhere. I'm taking it from the Board of Selectmen, I'm taking it from the town administrator, I'm taking it from the citizens, I'm taking it from the officers. I'm taking all that information and then basing my decisions on that. So I think communication would be number one. I also think that accountability, and I think we're working towards that. Post does have those guidelines that is saying that officers need to be held accountable for their actions. Again, it's how do you look in the public? How do you look from the outside? We're doing that with our policy management system, as we're holding officers accountable for being in their policies. For me, I hold myself accountable. I hold myself to a higher standard. I expect everybody else to be held to that higher standard as well. And in doing that, I want to make sure that I'm not just saying it, but I need to be doing it as well. I can't give mixed messaging. I can't say one thing and then do another. I can't say, hey, I want you to go, do traffic in this area, and because you don't write tickets, that doesn't mean that it's not working. I mean, it's if I'm giving a task and it's being completed, that person, the officers should be recognized for that. I think again that would boost one of the issues I said before, morale, would boost morale up. So communication, accountability, and obviously the opioid epidemic, that's one of the major things facing us. I mean, that is by far our largest call that we go on. And again, the way I would do that is I would start at using those external resources that we have and bringing them inside the police department a little more than we currently do.
Okay, thanks.
Donna?
You touched on this, but what do you see as, you personally, what do you see as the greatest issue that's facing law enforcement today?
The greatest issue facing law enforcement in general, I believe, is the negative portrayal in the media. Is just that 1% or even less than 1% is not a fair and accurate representation of what the police and law enforcement is today. But it's blown out of proportion a lot of times, and we're all grouped into that. And I would say it's well below 1%, but that's the representative, and it's creating a false narrative, and it's creating some undue tensions between community and law enforcement. The way to handle that, I think, again, would be to increase community involvement, increase the exposure, being transparent, letting the community see exactly what we're doing by getting a Citizens Police Academy, getting them in there, seeing what we do day to day, seeing how we train for an excessive force case. I find it that when you watch on TV, you'll see a politician say, oh, this is a use of force case, excessive force, and then they go through the training. And like, wow, I never understood this. But they don't take the time to do the research beforehand, and they come out and they say these things, and people take it and run with it, and it just gives us a bad reputation and creates that undue tension.
Excellent. Thank you.
Tiffany?
Can you please describe your current relationship with the Superiors Union? If you become chief, what do you think the relationship would be like with the union, and how often do you think that you should need to meet with them?
I have a long history with the unions. As far as when I was a patrolman, I was the vice president of our patrolmen's union for 3 terms. I've been on the bargaining committee every year for the past 20 years, whether it be patrolman. I'm currently on the bargaining committee for the Superior Officers Union. So I'm involved in it. I have a good relationship with them. I understand that there's 2 sides to every coin. It's a give and take. It's not no one really comes out winning. It's, you know, we're gonna give you this, we want this, and it's just that gentle, all right, it's the bargaining, you know, but I don't have an issue with that. I've been involved with it for over 20 years, and I think I've been fairly successful with it. Every time we've walked away, I think the town has been in a better place, and us as a union has been in a better place as well.
Great, thank you.
Kara?
Can you tell us about your experience or ability to work with other professionals within the community?
As far as other professionals, I grew up in Rockland. I've been in the community for over 40 years. I've been heavily involved in the community. I'm a member of Holy Family Parish, so I've dealt with the religious aspect of the community. I was involved there as a Eucharistic minister, as a lector, as a parish council member. And then when I went on to the police department, again, every position I've held has brought me closer to some type of relationship I have. When I was a dare officer, again, I built that relationship with the school committee. When I was on the bargaining committee, I'm building a relationship with the Board of Selectmen, I'm building a relationship with the town administrator. In our everyday operations, we naturally build relationships with the highway department, the sewer department, the water department, whether it's being on a detail or coordinating any type of events we have. As a member of the Honor Guard and the commanding officer of the Honor Guard, I'm involved in the civic organizations. With the veterans agent, Tim White, I have a good relationship with him. We're always talking, we're always coordinating things. So I have a good relationship with a lot of the different town agencies. But there's always room for improvement. And again, like I had said in my opening, I want to make sure that I have a good relationship with every single agency, because I'm sure that they have things that will benefit me and I have things that will benefit them.
Thank you.
So you've touched on some areas within the department that you feel might need some improvement. How would you approach, what would your approach be in implementing the changes in those areas that you touched upon? You know, you talked about improving communication up, right? How would you go about improving that, and what might you implement to make those changes?
I think it would be just, again, it's setting those clear-cut expectations and letting them know that, and that includes everyone from the officer to the chief himself. You know, as a chief, I need to, if I say to somebody, I want you to filter information up to me, and then you filter information up and you never hear back from me, you're not going to filter information up to me anymore. So it's giving those clear-cut expectations and saying, okay, if you do this, I'm going to do this. If you're going to take the time and the effort to say, hey, I think this is a good idea, is to put a process in. Okay, well, you need to give that to the sergeant needs to give that to the lieutenant needs to give that to the deputy needs to give that to me. It's following that chain of command. And then as a chief, it's talking to the deputy and saying, make sure that, you know, even if you don't agree with it, you tell it to me, tell the lieutenant. Even if you don't agree with it, you need to tell the deputy, and so on and so forth. And even though you may not agree with it, it's filter it up to me, let me at least know what's going on, and it's responding to the officer and letting them know that even if you're not going to accept what they're saying, that you listen to them, that you explored it. So that would be the biggest thing as far as implementing communications, is giving those expectations and sticking with it.
Thank you. Lori?
Yeah, what's the next step in your professional development as far as continuing ed goes, and why?
I'm currently in a master's degree program. I should be finishing that. My expected is to be finishing it next month. I do have 2 classes remaining.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so that would be my initial step. I'm always wanting to further educate myself. The FBI leader program offers 3 different classes: a supervisory a supervisory program, a command program, and an executive program. They're each a week long. I've completed all 3 of those. The next step in that professional would be the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. That would be something I would definitely be interested in attending. And as recent as this morning, I was looking at different training seminars. I don't think you can ever have enough training. Again, no matter where you go, you're going to pick up things from other people, and hopefully you'll impart some of your wisdom on them as well. I don't see it ever stopping, and I'm definitely open to that.
Very good. Thanks.
Donna?
I do not have any other questions, but I thank you for your information and your time.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
It's my last question, but may I ask, what do you regard as your greatest career achievement And how does it kind of speak to you as who you are as?
My overall career achievement would probably be the work that I've done with the Rockland Police Honor Guard. As I progressed through my career, my achievements probably changed. When I made sergeant, that was my greatest achievement at that point in my career. When I recently became lieutenant, that's an amazing accomplishment for me. I worked very hard at that, but I think the most rewarding is probably the Honor Guard, because I was able to it wasn't just a personal accomplishment, it was a department accomplishment, it was a team accomplishment. I didn't do it by myself. I had a lot of good support there. We were able to expand to a very successful program. We've represented the department and the town at all 5 of the major sporting events. We have them calling us, asking us to go do that. We've instituted a training program where we're training once a month, to keep up our skills. Those are all things that we didn't have when I took the program over. It was a great program, but again, I don't think that anything is ever perfect. There's always room to improve, and even today I'm still trying to improve that program. So I would say, although my accomplishments have changed, my greatest was probably the Honor Guard.
Thank you.
Kara?
My last question is, what is your approach to community policing?
I'm 100% into community policing. I think that's the backbone of policing nowadays. I mean, we work for the community. Without them, we don't exist. We're there. I don't see us as it's law enforcement, but we're so much more than that. I enjoy going out and just speaking to people. Again, it's something I've done my entire career, where I've put myself in positions where it's more than just the law enforcement aspect of it. It's more than just responding to calls. It's getting out there. The DARE program is super rewarding for that. It's speaking to the kids. The DARE program is not 100% effective, but it is effective absolutely on some people. I've spoken to, unfortunately, I've met kids years later that are smoking a cigarette, and then I've met kids that actually come to me and say, that really changed my life. I had an uncle that passed away from drugs. I had someone in my family and they said, in the information that they got, and it's not only information, but it's those relationships that I built with them, and to see them 10, 15 years later, coming up to me and sharing some of their life experiences. So that would be.
Thank you.
So you've touched on it quite a bit here. Rockland's a community that's been devastated by the opioid epidemic, and obviously you've been on the front lines educating the kids through DARE over the years. In a perfect world, and where your budgetary needs were met, and without going into necessarily the outside services like Rockland Cares, what would you do as chief to combat and further educate to prevent a similar epidemic from occurring in the future?
I think education is key. I think that's where it starts. So in addition to the DARE program, the DARE program right now is primarily in the 5th grade, but there is a portion that's a middle school portion, there's a high school portion. Again, like you said, funding just doesn't allow us to teach it for K through 12. But it is there if it's something. Again, DARE is not the be-all, end-all. I think it goes to having those community meetings, having, I know that the plan is to put a second SRO officer in there. I think actually having the SROs, I've had many conversations with Officer Schnabel about actually getting in there and teaching. I mean, he has great relationships with these kids. It's almost like he's their big brother. No matter where he is, they're always going up to him. And hearing information about drugs and from people like that are more impactful than someone that you don't know, a stranger that you don't know coming to tell you that. So I think it's getting that high school component in there, that middle school component, where right now we're focusing on the 5th graders, which is great, and it does have an effect. But if we had the ability to do that, is extending that program through the middle school, through the high school, and again, just educating not only the students, but it's educating the parents, it's educating the community, it's having those group discussions.
Perfect. Lori?
Well, my final question is, You know, I often see Chief Llewellyn out in the community, on the streets, either on duty or interacting with residents. What are your thoughts on the higher-ups in the Rockland Police Department doing street time, if you will? Having skin in the game to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the community, and including like active shooter situations, you know, the more serious things.
I think it's crucial. I think if you're going to be leading that department and making those major decisions, you need to be knowledgeable about that. For example, even as a lieutenant, I'll be going to the AAA on Thursday to speak to their driver's ed program just about the importance of interaction with police officers. That's something that, you know, I choose to do. I enjoy that. It's being out there. Like you said, Chief Llewellyn's out there doing it all the time. It's a great role model to have to be doing that. I mean, that's the type of chief I want to be. I want to be out there. I don't want to be sitting behind a desk constantly. As my duties are right now are primarily administrative, but I also have that ability to go out, and I do. I frequently go out and I'll drive around, and I'm not making car stops, but I'm stopping in at the senior center and I'm speaking to people there. I'm stopping in at different businesses. I'm speaking to people there. Again, I'm speaking to kids. I'm into the school, and no one tells me I have to. I enjoy that. That's part of what drives me as far as, like I said earlier, being that police officer is, you know, is not so much the enforcement part of it. It's that community policing, that interactive with the community that I enjoy. I don't see that as a task at all, and
Yeah.
I would continue that.
And do you learn things from people in the community?
Oh,
to bring
absolutely.
back to the department?
Yes,
too?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I said that earlier. It's you learn wherever you go. There's no, everything can be an educational experience. And you want to build those relationships, because if you're out there in the community and you're honest with people and you're upfront with people, they're honest and upfront with you back. And I've experienced that.
Thanks.
Tiffany?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. Kara?
Thank you.
All right, I just got a couple more.
Sure.
What would you do if one of your officers committed a crime?
No question at all. I would treat them just like anybody else. If they commit a crime, there's no, I think I mentioned earlier, you're responsible for your own actions. There's no guilt there on my part. There's no, if you do something wrong, you're responsible for your own actions, whatever the crime is, and I would treat them just as I would treat any other person.
Okay. And last question, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself that might help us make a decision?
No, I've been in Rockland for 40 years. I've been with the Rockland Police Department for 26 years. No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. You know, this is my home. I love the Rockland Police Department. I love working here. I love the town. Again, I've ingrained myself in the town from when I went to Rockland Middle School. I went to Rockland High School. I've been in the faith community. I've been a coach for 30 years, coaching everyone from kindergarten to adults, and I do it because I enjoy it. I start with a kids team. My kid leaves the team. I'm still coaching because I like it, and it's just something I enjoy. I enjoy representing Rockland. I think it's a great town, and I'd be honored to be the next chief of police.
Okay. Lieutenant Coakley, thank you for your time. And to your point, you know, whatever occurs, I think, you know, we're all thrilled to have you in the department, a person of your character, moving on into the future in a leadership position, regardless of whatever occurs tonight. So I appreciate your time, and
thank you.
Stick around. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys, everybody good? Anybody need to take a quick break or anything like that? You guys are good? Okay. Sometimes you do. Before we do executive or anything like that.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Nick. Lieutenant, thank you for joining us. So like I said to the others, it's just a conversation. nothing to be nervous about. We'll just go right into it. Worry?
Hi. I thank you for stepping up and congratulations on being a candidate. So, what's going on in Rockland? What's the #1 crime concern, and what are your ideas to address it?
Sure. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I fully appreciate and understand that how important this position is in our community, what the role the police department plays, and I'm actually quite honored to be chosen as one of the finalists for this position. To answer your question, Rockland isn't unique in that it does face a number of challenges that most communities do. And I would think one of the more primary challenges that we're facing right now is probably mental health crisis. We find that our officers, when they're dealing with those who may be going through a mental health crisis, it's a very challenging call because it can be both fraught with danger, but also those people need some help and support. So we're fortunate enough that our officers are trained in that type of thing, dealing with emotionally challenged individuals, and also crisis intervention. So what we want to do is obviously to deal with that situation is make sure our officers are trained, get the proper training first and foremost. But then secondly, we want to make sure that when we deal with those types of individuals that we're bringing all the resources that we can and make them available, because quite honestly, it's something that could be a problem that could cross agency barriers. Like we're fortunate to work closely with the Rockland Fire Department, who do an amazing job, who arrive on those scenes and help us. But a situation like dealing with those who may be going through a crisis, then we want to make sure that we bring everybody together and try to resolve it that way. But again, our officers are trained in that. It's a challenging call, but our officers do a great job. But that'd be probably one of the more challenging things that we're dealing with right now.
Thanks.
Donna?
What's your view of the current morale at the police department?
I think it's great. I really do. One of the things I gauge as a lieutenant, and again, I've been a lieutenant for 13 years, so I'm pretty in tune with what's going down there as far as morale goes. One of the things I like to hear when I walk out the door of my office and I look down the hallways, to hear laughter and roll call. That's a sign to me that officers are engaged, they're enjoying their job. We pay very close attention to sick records. We look at attendance records. We want to make sure that our officers are coming to work, they're doing the tasks that they need to be doing. So we pay close attention to that. I would say morale is in good shape, and you know, obviously you want to maintain good morale because we want our officers doing the job they're doing every day. Here at the RPD, we set the bar very high, and being a part of the management team with Chief Llewellyn and Gerard Aramo, Deputy Chief Aramo, we set that bar high, and we do it for a reason, because officers will rise to that bar if you set it. So that's one of the things we do. But as far as morale, you know, I think it's in good shape. The ways you improve morale, though, I want some of the ways. Training, give the officers what they want. They want training. They want to have the equipment they need to do their jobs. You want to give them, you want to empower officers. You want to give the officers the ability to make decisions. One of the things I always focused on as a supervisor was really trying to have the officers engaged in making decisions and giving them that ability. It's very easy to go to a scene as a supervisor and take over and just say, okay, do this, this, this. But if you can have the officers engage and offer some input, that's how they learn. That's how they take ownership, and that's how they become better. And that's one of the things I've always tried to do.
Tiffany?
Hello. Could you please summarize your experience and why are you interested in becoming chief, and then what attributes about your experience would help make you the chief that you would like to be?
Thank you for the question. So I grew up in the town of Rockland. I grew up on East Water Street. I still have family who live there. Went to Rockland High School, graduated there, and after high school I went to Bridgewater State, where I studied history and high school education. I graduated and went on and took a position as an 8th grade school teacher in Brockton. And I taught 8th grade history for 3.5 years. But at the same time, I worked, took the civil service test, and became a part-time officer with the Rockland Police Department in '93. So I was able to work during the summers and during vacations. I was fortunate enough in 1996 to be offered a full-time position with the police department, and I took that position. Got a great exposure to working with some of the uniform officers there. One of the highlights of that was taking over the Rockland DARE program. And I started that in 2001. That's really where I started to get my leadership experience. And I did that for 10 years, and I believe we put close to 2,500 students through that program while I was there. So great experience for me, real great organizing the classes. So in 2003, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, and great opportunity working with the rank and file and supervising officers on the street. I also attended Anna Maria College and got my master's degree in criminal justice. So working as a sergeant, one of the highlights was I started taking on some more administrative duties, and some of those duties involved writing grants. So as my tenure with the Rockland Police Department, I've written more than $800,000 worth of grants for the town. So I'm really proud of that. It brings money into our entire department that the taxpayers don't have to worry about. So one of the grants I wrote was an opportunity for myself to travel to San Diego, California, where I took part in a technology law enforcement consortium. It was a conference in which we saw best practices and saw what was on the cutting edge of technology with law enforcement. So I was able to attend that and bring that back to the department and share with the officers to see what was going on. In 2009, I took my lieutenant's exam and topped that exam and was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. And that's where I sit today. I have 13 years as a police lieutenant involved in a myriad of administrative duties that range from internal affairs. I'm internal affairs officer for 13 years, handling discipline cases, writing grants, facilitating our physical fitness assessment program, scheduling, reviewing all the reports, handling critical incidents, and things of that nature. So my experiences, along with my education, I have a master's degree in criminal justice. I've attended FBI leader trainings. I think it's positioned me nicely to this point in my career where I'm ready to take on this position as chief of police. It's really, everything in my career has culminated to this point. So I'm real excited about that. I'm proud of that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kara?
As chief, what would be your 5-year plan for the department?
So when you start thinking about strategic plan, that's a great question, but when you start thinking about strategic planning, it starts with steps, smaller steps. I think certainly accreditation is something that we are moving forward, looking forward to, and working towards. That would certainly be a part of what we're doing. I think accreditation is something that will bring our policies and procedures in line with best practices for law enforcement. That's certainly something we want to look at and would be a part of my plan. Staffing is certainly something we want to look at. We want to look at staffing and make sure it's appropriate. We want to look at our promotion situation. We want to look at our promotion programs and make sure there's no barriers to anything. We want to make sure we promote the proper people, and we want to make sure we bring on the proper people. We want to make sure we screen them appropriately. We want to make sure that, because it's all about who you bring on, that saves you headaches down the road. We want to make sure we do that. But my 5-year plan would entail accreditation. It would entail looking at the building itself to make sure that everything is appropriate and that the officers have what they need and a good facility, which we do now. And I think also, making sure that we look far enough ahead, but also understand that even though we're forecasting, we make decisions in the present, right? So that's why we want to make sure that we make sound decisions early on so we don't have any problems later on. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
So, Lieutenant, you've been in the department, obviously, for a number of years, and you've worked alongside some of the other officers as colleagues, and in some cases, maybe even as a partner. Now, you've been in a leadership position for, over 17 years now as well, actually even longer. So, how difficult do you think it'll be holding some of those officers accountable, being now that you don't have a deputy and a chief behind you, being the last line of discipline? How difficult of a transition you think that would be for you?
So it's never easy, but what I will fall back on is my history. We have always maintained a high level of decorum at the police department, and that makes it so much easier. When you lead by example, when you set that bar and you follow through yourself, I've never asked any officer under my command to do anything I haven't done myself. So when you have that respect, which I feel I do, which we all do, the chief and the deputy as well, when you have that respect, it makes it much easier. I think it would be a smooth transition. What I think will be important is that whatever management team, I say I'm honored to get this position, whatever management team we bring in, it has to be the right team that works together and maintains that direction. We are in the right direction of the Rockland Police Department. We want to continue that direction, and we want to make sure that we hold officers accountable all the time. And we have. So I think when officers know they're going to be held accountable, they rise to that level.
Thank you. Lori?
What are your top 3 issues or tasks you think the next chief will have to work on?
So I think right now, one of the things we're dealing with is police reform. We want to make sure we conform to all the qualifications and all the requirements that police reform entails, which we are. I think, as I mentioned before, accreditation is certainly something that's going to help us, realize best practices in law enforcement. It's going to streamline our policies and procedures, make sure they're relevant, make sure they're lawful, and make sure they meet the mission of our department. We have a mission statement with the Rockland Police Department. That's a good one. I read it all the time. But I think one of the things you want to do as a new leader is you want to revisit that. You want to revisit the mission statement. You want to revisit your goals, your value statement, and make sure they fit what's going on in 21st century policing, because we're moving forward in that direction. I've always felt that the citizens of a community will respect and follow the police and follow the rules as long as they feel it's legitimate. As you know, in some places across the country and what you've seen on TV, there's been some problems. So we want to make sure that our police department is lawfully present, that our rules and regulations are lawful, and make sure that our authority is legitimate. And I think, and we have, because the citizens of this community have always been supportive of us, we'll respect that. So accreditation for sure, and I'm sorry, was it 3?
Yeah. Yeah, you said police reform, accreditation, and...
Yeah, and I think probably recruitment and retention. That would certainly be something. As you know, there's been somewhat of a gap with people wanting to go into law enforcement. So we need to do a better job of trying to attract the best qualified candidates that we can. And we can do that. Rockland Police Department offers a lot. We offer a great benefits package. We offer a lot down the police station with different units that are there, motorcycles, metro, a whole gamut of different things that I think a lot of people will be interested in. But we need to highlight that. We need to let people know what we're doing. And we can do that on our social media page. We can do that through our website. And if needed, we can go out to universities. We can go advertise for those positions. Because I think we can do that, and we have a lot to offer.
So I wanted to piggyback off what you just said. What do you feel about civil service, that system, as far as getting the best candidate?
Yeah. So civil service, it hinders us a little bit in the hiring process. It really does. There's a lot of rules, and they had their moment. There was a time when civil service played a good role, but I think right now what we're doing is it's limiting our ability to hire good candidates and gather a good candidate pool. That's what we're running into. So my thoughts would be to look away from civil service and possibly move towards leaving civil service. That would be my opinion.
Okay, thanks.
Donna?
You touched on this briefly before, but what is your feeling about the current relationship between the police department and the fire department?
Oh, I think it's good. When I work the streets, and I do work the streets, we work hand in hand. A lot of the calls that we go on, and this is about partnerships. Our police department has done a tremendous job with partnerships, whether it's with the school, whether it's through highway, and I'll give you a good example. So Salem Street, that's an area of town that is a big cut through. A lot of people come down Salem Street, they cut through to get from the highway, usually in the evening, and then they go towards the highway in the morning. So we get a lot of calls and complaints about speeders there. So obviously you can stick a cruiser down there and write some tickets and try to do some enforcement, and that's okay, and that has a limited impact. But one of the things I looked at was said, let's come at this from a different point of view. Let's write a grant, in which I did, and we wrote a grant for one of those traffic signs. It's a solar-powered traffic sign. You may have seen it. We have them around town. So that's from the police department, and we positioned that on Salem Street. We also we worked with Dave Taylor and the highway department to put up some additional signage there with 30-mile-an-hour signs at the beginning and the end. So now we have an educational piece. We also have a component where the people who are driving can see that speed. And then also we can gather data from that sign. It gives you highs and lows, car counts, things of that nature. So we can target our enforcement in a more educational and appropriate manner. So that's a great example of a partnership that I was involved in, and that's something we can certainly do. So kind of proud of that. But
Excellent. Thank you.
Tiffany?
Can you please
elaborate on your philosophy on discipline within the department and what your approach is?
Okay, that's a great question, and I appreciate it. So again, a lot of it's going to come back to setting that bar. If the management of a police department and the supervisors of a police department hold everybody accountable, that makes it much easier, and you run into fewer discipline problems. The whole goal is to mitigate discipline. You don't want to have to deal with discipline, so what you do is you set the bar high, you make sure policies and procedures are enforced, you make sure officers are followed up upon, and things of that nature. However, you always run into those times when you have to handle discipline, and I have, in 13 years, I've handled quite a few, and some pretty significant ones. You handle them in a progressive manner. We handle discipline progressively. We make sure that when we hand out discipline, it's handled in a state. So, for example, if an officer violates a policy, we may handle it in maybe a verbal warning, or maybe we'll handle it in a written warning, or maybe we'll do something else. But once that becomes a pattern, becomes in a more of an increased, the response from us must be in proportion to what they did. We have to progressively see that message is sent, and that's how we've handled it with the police station at this time. But again, it comes back to setting that bar high. You have fewer instances when you set that bar high, and that's what we've tried to do.
Thank you.
Karen?
As you know, our department does not currently use body-worn cameras. What are your thoughts on the use of body-worn cameras?
So I'm in favor of anything that's going to increase the trust and transparency with our community. And body-worn cameras will do that. The thing with body-worn cameras is that it's challenging in that there's a couple things that go along with that. So certainly there's a privacy issue that goes along with body cameras. We go into homes quite a bit. We go into homes for welfare checks. We go in for maybe domestic incidences. So sometimes when people are, you come in with a camera on, they may not be more likely or inclined to speak to you, things of that nature. However, there's things you can overcome that. You can write policies that will let you overcome that. Maybe you don't turn it on when you're in the house if it's not a danger. There's other issues. There's a cost associated with that, but again, I don't think that's insurmountable because there are grants out there that will help you fund those cameras. And then, it's really about policy. It's about how you write your body-worn camera policy. And I reviewed a number already. The state just recently completed a commission that was part of the police reform where they were going to study body-worn cameras and also talk about best practices and policies that municipalities could adopt. And they just finished that. So I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of communities start to digest that now and maybe come out with some thoughts about body-worn cameras. But to answer your question, I'm in favor of them. I've spoke to a number of officers. Most of the officers I speak to are in favor of them. It protects officers, quite honestly. It can protect them from false allegations. It can help us gather digital evidence in a crime scene. There's a lot of benefits to them. But it has to be carefully worded in a policy so it fits our mission, all right? And it also ensures the privacy of the citizens in this community.
Thank you.
Can you describe your experience interacting with the press? Have you ever held a press conference or written a press release?
Yeah, so one of my duties as lieutenant, I was the press officer, and I handled a number of press releases. I handed them out. I've done several on-camera interviews with the media. My philosophy with the media is simple. It's a partnership. It's a partnership just like it's a partnership with the schools or the highway. The purpose, the reason you partner with the media is to fulfill your law enforcement mission, okay? And that's what we do. They do it so they can get something to put on the news, but our goal is to work with them so we can achieve our goal, which is our law enforcement mission. If you have a missing child, they're a great partner to have, all right? So my experience working with the media, I have no problem with it. My teaching background has given me the ability, I don't mind standing up and talking to people. I don't shy away from that. But I do think it's a great opportunity working with the media to use them to try to get your mission accomplished. So.
Thank you. Lori.
I often see Chief Llewellyn out in the community, whether he's on duty or interacting with residents. What are your thoughts on the higher-ups in the RPD doing street time, if you will, and keeping skin in the game and having your finger on the pulse of what's going on in town?
No, I think it's a great idea. I mean, getting back to the grant writing, we were having some difficulties in some of the places like the rail trails and some of the other issues. So I wrote a grant to allow officers to get on bicycles. Yep. So you may have seen them. They were going up and down the rail trail on bicycles. I was one of them because I like to ride the bike. I love riding the pedal bike.
Yeah.
We had officers doing the walking beat uptown. You may have seen them walking in tandem. There's nothing like face-to-face time when you're dealing with businesses and people. People want to talk to you. It's one thing to drive by at 20 miles an hour, but when you walk down the street and you have an ability to talk to people, talk to business people, engage people, and even driving down the rail trail on a bicycle, people, they see you and they were so comforted by that, and they were so thankful. So I am all for that. I'm all for walking and pedal bikes and whatever it takes to engage the community and community outreach. We do it now, and I'd like to continue and build upon that.
Donna?
Now, you've talked about grant writing. Have you also had experience with preparing a budget?
So my budget experience really revolves around some of the grants I write. The grants I write for traffic enforcement deals with salaries and payroll and things of that nature. So I do have experience in budget and procurement, purchasing equipment, such as the signs I mentioned. That's really my experience with the budget right there. My particular position doesn't allow, really afford itself to handling the department budget. So I have limited exposure to that. However, I'm a quick learner. I'm excited about it. I think I got the best teacher there is. He knows the budget like the back of his hand, and I have no doubt that if given this position, I'll be up to speed very quickly.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
Could you please describe a difficult situation that you encountered with another individual or department, how you handled it, what you learned from it, and your present relationship with that individual or department?
So I think one of the most difficult things I handle is discipline cases. Because you work with people all the time, you work with them on the street, you work with them, and all of a sudden something happens, and so you're forced to put yourself in a position where now you have to say, listen, a mistake was made, and you try to correct it. So I'm thinking about an incident that has occurred in which someone has violated some policies and procedures, and making efforts to try and correct that behavior, because that's what you're about to do. You're trying to correct the behavior. Right? You don't want to cut the person loose. You want to see if you can correct what they've done so they learn and don't commit it again. So that would be certainly one of the examples that I had. We're dealing with an individual that violated policies and procedures. We handled it. We corrected it with appropriate and compassionate response, I feel, and hopefully that'll be the end of it.
Thank you.
Kara?
I know you've touched on this as well, but what is your knowledge and understanding of police reform in the post-commission, and how will it affect the department?
Yeah, so my knowledge, I've attended, and I attend them quite frequently, the online commission meetings, just to stay abreast of what they're offering. So we work very closely because the requirements that they have to do with making sure that any discipline cases that we have are sent. We have requirements for officers who go into the academy. So it's certainly something that is almost on an every other day basis that we're dealing with to stay, relevant to what they want us to do. It will impact our department. It's going to impact every department, and it's something. But on the bright side, and I always consider myself kind of an optimist in a lot of ways, that it's something that's going to help us. It's going to help departments maybe who are struggling with certain situations. It's going to help streamline and again incorporate some of the best practices, because now you'll have the ability to do that, and we will be able to do that too. But our department is in fantastic shape, so we're usually on the cutting edge of a lot of different things. So we're right in front of it, and we're handling it the way it's supposed to be handled.
Thank you.
Are there any areas within the department that you feel need improvement or change? And if so, how would you approach to implementing those changes?
As I mentioned, I mean, we have probably one of the premier departments on the South Shore. There's not a lot of drastic changes that I feel need to be made to this department. Obviously, as I mentioned before, one of the things we can talk about is maybe revisiting our mission statement and things like that and our core values, and just kind of looking at that again and see if we were meeting our 21st century policing objectives. But as far as that goes, I don't think we have a whole lot that needs to be changed right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of changes with staffing, for sure. Obviously the chief is retiring, So there'll be some choices that need to be made. And when those staffing changes come, that comes along a lot of changes as well. But they're good. Changes can be good because, you know, brings a fresh set of eyes to different positions, and it sparks some knowledge, and it also gets people to think about their new position and gets excitement going. So we're excited about that too.
Rory?
In the span of your entire career, what was your most difficult professional challenge, and how did you handle it?
So I guess one of the things that you know was difficult for me was probably working the overnights. I'm just thinking out loud, something that was a challenge for me, because at the time when I was on overnights, I had a young family.
Yeah.
My kids were young. And ask any first responder, when you're working those hours overnight, they can be a challenge because, you know, sleeping and things like that become
My husband
really,
did it, yeah,
okay.
I get it.
So, you know, that can be a real tough thing to have to deal with. But you know what? You do it because that's your job. I've never been a complainer. I've always, you know, do my job, make sure it gets done to the best of my ability. You know, so that's just one example of something like that.
Okay. Thanks.
Donna? What do you personally see as the greatest issue facing law enforcement today?
So we talked a little bit about mental health and things of that nature. That's certainly one of them. And again, I talked about how it can be a call that can be a dangerous call. But I think there's definitely things that we can do. And a lot of departments, what they're looking at now is bringing on part-time clinicians, mental health clinicians, to help work with departments, either on a regional basis or full-time. So if we have the ability to do that, there's grant money, I think, available for that as well. That's something I'd like to look at closely. You know, what you don't want is you don't want to have a social worker coming in and dealing with somebody who's armed or something like that, right? So we want to make sure that we have a safe situation, but then we can bring in somebody who has more training than officers. You know, there's the old saying that if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So we don't want officers who have limited exposure and training, and also maybe not the experience dealing with somebody where we could have a clinician come in who has a whole skill set that's available for them to deal with that. So that's something I'd be looking at. And again, after dealing with those who are going through crisis, I'm thinking recruitment and retention for sure.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
What is your current relationship with the, excuse me, Superiors Union? And if you become chief, what do you think your relationship would be with the union, and how often would you meet with them?
So my relationship with them now is I'm currently the president of the Superiors Union. Again, all tremendous individuals, and I can say that for all of them, all dedicated people, dedicated officers who are looking out for the best interests of the town. On the positive note, I've gained a lot of experience in bargaining and think I've learned a lot about that. I've sat at the table on a number of occasions working in bargaining, learned a lot there. If I was honored with the position of chief of police of this community, obviously I would step away from that, and that would fall on someone else in that unit. We have staff meetings on a regular basis where we sit down with the sergeants and we have a great relationship with them. We gather their input. They're valued. They know they're valued because we value them. We tell them that. And so it's all about communication with me. I walk around the building on a continuous basis, much like the chief does and the deputy chief. We gather information. We want to know what's going on. If there's a problem, tell us. We want to know what's going on and deal with it. So I don't anticipate any issues there. I feel that my relationship with the superiors is healthy. It's good. And I have experience with them now, and I don't expect that to change too much if I was to get the position.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kara?
Can you tell us about your experience or ability to work with other professionals within the community?
Yeah, so for me, it's always been about partnerships. I've really made an effort to build partnerships. Now, they can be partnerships with the highway department, or it can be partnerships with the schools, but also with faith-based organizations. I work very closely with the Holy Family Church when they put on their big events down there, logistically work in crowds and things of that nature. I work down at the Calvary Chapel working with their officials doing crisis intervention through their school intervention programs. So it's all about partnerships for me, and because quite honestly, when you're dealing with social ills that come across the police department's purview, sometimes you need to bring in other departments to help you, because the interagency barriers that come up, you want to make sure that you can have someone to talk to and do that. So that's a good example of that. I would certainly be I'd certainly be able to say that my relationships with all the different agencies in the town is first rate. And again, only because we work together. We work together. If they call me, I answer my phone, and we get the job done. Whether it's the fall festival or whether it's the the stroll or whatever it is we're dealing with. The police department, is going to be involved. We're ready to go. What do you need? We sit down at the table and we get it done.
Thank you.
Can you outline your experience with the hiring process within the police department? And what type of attributes and skills and experiences are you looking for when hiring a police officer if you become chief?
So my experience with the hiring process is I've sat in on a number of interviews for employees there. What I'm looking for, and I'm looking for someone who's a problem solver. That's what I look for. I am actually one of the guys that when they give us the resume, I open up, I look in it, I open the transcripts, I want to see the grades. I really delve into the nitty-gritty. I want to know what they're all about. But down deep, I'm looking for someone who's a problem solver, someone who can communicate, all right? And that's usually ready and available during an interview. Because that's what it's all about in police work. It's really problem solving. It's getting to the roots of problems, right? Trying to solve them on that level so they don't reoccur. And it's also putting in extra time. You want to make sure someone has the ability to sit down, communicate, and put in that time necessary to solve an issue. But my experience, in the short answer, is really sitting in some of the panels that we went through to go through interviews, writing up reports, giving my recommendations to the chief so he can make an informed decision about who he wants to hire.
Perfect, thank you. Lori?
My last question is, what's the next step in your own professional development, continuing ed, and why?
Okay. So let me say this. My complete goal is chief of police in this community. I have no further aspirations for anything. My career will begin and end at Rockland. And in the short words, if given this position, I'm all in. This is my goal. This is my career goal. I'm real excited about this opportunity. Having said that, I know that as chief of police that they are afforded the opportunities to attend conferences and some of the more best practice type of meetings around the country or whatever. I'd be interested in attending those. I'd be interested in making myself a better person by gathering the most knowledge, by attending the chief's meetings, by going to all those particular events and building those relationships. Because also too, every town, every police department has similar problems. We're not unique. And when you go to these meetings, it's really surprising to hear, oh, you had the same problem, we had the same problem. So how did you handle it? Oh, well, that's a great idea. And oh, I could tell how I handled something. That's how you do that. That's how you become better. And that's why my goal is always to be better, So that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah. Oh, I lied. I have one more
I thought you
question.
did. I was
sorry.
tracking it over here. I was like, wait a minute.
Sorry about that. But,
I thought that was the time. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, sure. My pleasure.
Tiffany.
Well, this is my final question. Could you please describe what you consider your greatest career achievement to this date, and basically, is there anything about that would help you be the chief that you would like to be?
So I would say just that my promotion to lieutenant. At the time when the opportunity came up, the exams were very difficult, and it required a lot of study. You basically had to study everything, the stacks of books this high. So when we took that first exam, I topped that exam, and I was #1. But unfortunately, the position didn't become available. So that list ended up going away. It died. Just wasn't a position. So I had to do it again. And so when that next time came up, study hard and achieved, and again, came out #1 on that lieutenant's list. So again, proud of myself for that. And that was a great achievement to me because it really, stuck to my guns and made sure that I worked hard to do that. And working hard's always been something that's really benefited me. I think by that type of work ethic, that type of commitment, that's going to help you and become chief of police, because people are going to look at that, your employees will look at that, the people you work with look at that, respect value, and I think that goes a long way.
Thank you.
Kara.
My final question is, what is your approach to community policing?
So I'm a big believer in community policing. As I mentioned before, some of the grants I write revolve around community policing, some of the bike patrols, some of the walking beats. But it's more than that. It's more than just walking beats and bike patrols. It's a philosophy. We need to embolden in our officers and instill in our officers the idea behind every decision they make when they go on a call from a community policing philosophy. If they're approaching a situation where there's something going on, let's get to the root of the problem. Well, why is this occurring? Why are the kids hanging out here up here? Why is there damage to this window over here? Let's get to the root of it, let's resolve it at its core, and then that'll rectify the problem moving forward. That's what community policing is. But also, too, it's about relationships. It's about staying in contact with the business owners of town, see what their problems are, listening to what they have to say, and acting on that so they can make it a better place. So I am full force with community policing. I'm a big believer in it. It has to be almost a philosophy. It has to be something that officers think about almost in every decision they make.
So Rockland is obviously a community that's been devastated by the opioid epidemic. You've got a background as a teacher of the DARE program. What more can be done if you become chief and if you had no real budget constraints per se outside of partnering with like a Rockland Cares or the DARE program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things we're proud of is that we started carrying Narcan, as you know, and myself and Sergeant Brian McDonald were the two facilitators for that program, training our officers so they are familiar with Narcan and how it works and are able to deploy it on the street. It is a sad state of affairs about that type of thing. Again, Brian McDonald is one of the officers that's really got the pulse of that issue because he's part of our Brockton collaborative regional response. For me, as chief of police, I think one of the things I would be certainly looking at would again be that mental health clinician, because a lot of times drug abuse and mental health, homelessness, a lot of them are interwoven. They're together. So, it's not like you can just take one away, and sometimes if you take one, the other one starts up. So I think, again, it's about partnering with that mental health clinician, bring them on board, get their expertise. I think we're doing a real good job with the way we deploy Narcan, the way we train our officers, but also the way we're active in the group so we can kind of work with other towns to see where the trends are and address them right there.
Thank you. Lori?
This is my final question, I swear. Now is a crescendo moment for policing in America. There have been necessary changes and unforeseen challenges with that. Considering platforms like race, mental health, and the political divide, in your opinion, what are absolute musts for your officers' continuing education training?
Continuing education?
Yeah, like for your guys.
So I think one of the things that, and one of the things we have done is we need a focus on implicit bias training, de-escalation. We need to, and this is being taught in the in-service academies now, but we need to refocus on that, reaffirm that with our officers. And I think one of the things we can do when we look at our mission statement and core values is incorporate that into that. One of the things I put together with the technology aspect in our new computer program is that we track use of force incidents. So I'm able to pull up and see, how many times was force used on an arrest? How many, and if so, what kind of force was used? Was it a baton? Was it pepper spray? Was it this? Was it that? So what we found is that our use of force incidents are very low, and we're happy about that. But one of the things we need to focus on, too, to answer your question, is de-escalation training. Training dealing with de-escalation, and it's got to be scenario-based training. It's very easy to pick up a book or go to a class, but what we want is situations where officers are put through scenarios so they can actually see and act that part and find out, how would I act in this situation? So those are the things that I've seen in my research and the things that we're looking at in the academies, but that would definitely be something I'd be looking ahead to.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, I just have a couple more questions. What would you do if one of your officers committed a crime?
So as I mentioned before, we set the bar very high. We will not tolerate any criminal activity on the part of our officers. Depending on what's going on, it may be something that we would reach out to another agency to investigate and bring them in to take care of that. But again, we need to be clear that criminal activity won't be tolerated by any of our officers. It's a violation of our policies, and it's something that we can't have.
Okay, and last question. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself to help us make our decision?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. As I mentioned, I know how important this position is to this community. I'm honored to actually be part of it. What you have in me is somebody that is dedicated to this job. I've dedicated my life pretty much to this department. I'm real excited about the opportunities that are coming down the road. I'm a very optimistic individual. I've always, I actually feel, and I'm sure the board would echo, that the best years of Rockland in this town are yet to come. And I'm excited about being part of that. I'm a communicator. I like to communicate with people. I like to meet, to go over things. I like to be highly visible. I'm action orientated. And I like to make sure people that work with me are held accountable, but also to give them the tools they need. So that's who I am in a nutshell. But again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant. We appreciate, obviously, your interest in the position, and I think all of us are very proud of the fact that, regardless of whatever occurs tonight, that you're a member of the department either way, and we definitely have a bright future ahead of us. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'll open it up to the board for any discussions, any thoughts? Don, any thoughts?
I think we have 3 great candidates. I think that they each bring something positive and unique to the situation, and I think that we have a big decision.
Lori?
I concur that we have 3 excellent candidates. It's a very tough decision and choice. I love Sergeant Novio's SWAT team experience. I think that bring a lot to the department. Lieutenant Coakley's outreach to the community is spectacular, and Lieutenant Zioli, your years in the department speak a lot, and for me, just because of your experience, I'd say that you stand out among the candidates. So I just wanted to say that.
Tiffany?
I would like to thank each of you tonight, and we're so fortunate to have 3 incredibly qualified candidates, and I truly enjoyed hearing your background, and I truly enjoyed just witnessing your passion for your positions and for the department and for Rockland. I mean, it just rings true, and it's really astounding. And to that, for our having 3 qualified candidates, I also want to thank Chief Llewellyn, because the environment that you've cultivated has certainly been one that has enabled this to be produced. So with that said, I think we have a very difficult decision on our hands tonight.
Kara?
I also want to thank Sergeant Novio, Lieutenant Coakley, and Lieutenant Zioli for interviewing with us tonight. I also want to acknowledge and recognize their families that are here with us tonight.
Indeed.
It's a nice touch to see you all here. We have 3 very qualified candidates in front of us tonight. I think any one of them could do the job, and I think that's a credit to Chief Llewellyn. This is a bittersweet decision.
Yeah.
It's a hard decision, and it's a decision that does not come easy. I think this is one of the most important votes that I personally will have to take as a member of the Rockland Board of Selectmen. With that being said, I believe all candidates are qualified for the position, but I believe Lieutenant Nick Zioli is the most qualified candidate at this point to lead the Rockland Police Department on day 1.
So I'll piggyback on what everybody else up here has said. One of the things that I always look for in a leadership position is integrity and strength of character. With the 3 candidates that we had up here tonight, I think Kara said it, or maybe everybody said it. I think whoever we pick, we know that integrity is not going to be a concern, and strength of character is not going to be a concern. I think what excites me the most is that we have the depth within our own department, that we have 3 candidates that could be a chief anywhere. And I think that was obvious up here tonight, that every one of you guys are very qualified, and none of you would ever put Rockland in a position where we'd be embarrassed, which is something that we obviously, that's our job to embarrass the town, not you guys. So, so I think that's a credit to both Chief Llewellyn and Deputy Chief Aramo for the training and preparing you guys for this opportunity. I think what excites me is that regardless of what decision we make tonight, we still have the three of you. We still have the three of you within that department, and I look forward to a bright future with you guys as part of that leadership team within the Rockland Police Department. But looking at the candidates and going through the files and the paperwork that we received, taking into consideration the assessment center and looking at the experience and where we are, I would be probably leaning towards Lieutenant Zioli. But I think before we go any kind of a vote, I'd like to hear from our town administrator, Doug Lapp, who sat with our Assistant Town Administrator, Jen Constable, and our Human Resources, Stacey Callahan, and also had the opportunity to interview the candidates. And I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to give us your feedback before we actually put anything to a vote.
Thanks, Mike. And I want to let Sergeant Novio and Lieutenant Coakley and Lieutenant Zioli know just how much we, all three of us, I think I can speak for all three of us here, just how much we respect you, everything that you do for the town, and your commitment to the department. So I want to just thank you all for that. And thanks for allowing me to give our input, Mike. My input now is based on, similar to you, all the written materials we had, our private interviews, and as well, obviously I'm speaking now, Jen and Stacey aren't, but my observations from the interviews tonight, which really, I think, kind of aligned with all of our earlier information. And our consensus going into tonight, similarly, was for Lieutenant Zioli. And the four main reasons I have down are the number of years that he served as a lieutenant, that's meaningful, the breadth and the depth of his overall experience and his accomplishments, his command presence and his communication skills, and then, last but not least, the assessment center score, which was top. So with that is our recommendation.
Okay. So we started this process, I think it was over a year ago, probably even further back, where we started the process and how we wanted to iron it out. And one of the things that I promised from the start was that nobody would make a decision up here without hearing from the chief himself in regards to each of the candidates that were presented. The microphone's always yours, John.
Never met a microphone I didn't like.
I know.
Thank you very much. I just want to, first of all, thank everybody that's here and, really sticking your neck out, because it is a difficult thing to do, to put yourself out there knowing that you may or may not get the position. But I also want to make a really important point. These are three super candidates from the Rockland Police Department. We have more. We have more that, for whatever reasons, decided not to put themselves into the fray. So the depth of the Rockland Police Department goes even further than what you see before you here tonight. And that's a testament, not to just me, that's a testament to my leadership team, and always offering more training and more opportunities to learn and to be part of the decision-making process. So, listen, again, as we've talked about, very difficult decision for you guys to make. Personally, it was a very difficult decision for me to make, to retire. However, I am a firm believer that I have reached my peak, my goal, where I wanted to take this department. It is now important that you find somebody else to take it to the next level. My skill set has ended. I'm an old school cop. We need somebody with a new vision, bring in a new mission statement, make the department their own, and create their own vision and take it forward. So, listen, I back all three candidates. You're not going to go wrong any way whatsoever. Clearly, I have to, back my right-hand man. My man has been a right-hand for me for 13 years. You can't go wrong with Nick. If you guys, for some other reason, went in a different direction, you're not going to go wrong there either. I have had conversations with all three of them. I have no doubt that whoever becomes chief will use the other two as an integral part of their management team, and they will take this department to the next level. So, thank you for the opportunity to have the input.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. So with that said,
Mr. Chairman,
I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Lieutenant Nick Zioli as the next Chief of Police for the town of Rockland, effective September 16th, 2022, subject to successful contract negotiations.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have 2 seconds, okay. All those in favor, roll call vote. Selectwoman Childs?
Yes.
Selectwoman Shortall?
Yes.
Selectwoman Needham?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nyman?
Yes.
And myself, congratulations. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Would you like to say anything?
Yep.
Now it's your microphone, not,
Thank you.
yeah, it's not John's anymore, so.
Still warm.
Yeah.
Again, I'm honored. I'm honored, excited. I'm ready to hit the ground working. I'm ready for that. I just want to thank the board. I want to thank the community. I want to thank, there's a lot of people to thank. You don't get to these positions without a lot of help from a lot of people. And you know, I could stand up here, but I certainly want to thank Chief Llewellyn, Deputy Chief Gerardo, people who I have a colossal amount of respect for, who I worked with day in, day out, who taught, were more than friends, mentors. And so that types of thing makes a big difference. I know my family's here tonight, my lovely wife Linda and my daughter Jenna. They're back there, and any first responder knows that when you're a first responder, those long hours, they can be quite a harrowing thing. So she's tolerated me for a long time, and I love her for it, and I appreciate that. But I want to thank the board. I also want to thank the men and women of the Rockland Police Department who work hard every day. The things they do on a daily basis, it's amazing what they do. And I want to thank them for supporting me and supporting this town. So I know it's been a long day, so I'm going to end it there and just say thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Chief. Still Chief, sorry, all right? I just wanted him to hear it for the first time, okay? I got the daggers right away. So, effective September 16th.
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess we'll move on. If I could just find the agenda. Okay, Town Administrator's report and correspondence. Doug?
Yeah, and I'll just start by saying, for everyone here, for the police chief, please feel free to leave. I won't be offended. You don't have to spend a long night. It won't hurt my feelings. I'll let everybody get out through that. Thank you all for coming.
Oh, Doug, you really know how to clear a room, huh?
Right.
I know.
Look at that. They heard it was your turn to talk, and they're all right.
That's okay. That's okay. I do have a few updates to give you tonight. Some of these you probably received from me via email, but I'll just let you know formally and let the community know as well. The first is that the state legislature did formally extend the flexibility for remote meetings. That's through the end of March 2023. And the key part of that is it's without any new unfunded mandates. As the board knows, we were very concerned. All communities across the state were concerned when the House had an amendment to a bill that would have put a terrible unfunded mandate that would have made it really burdensome for all communities to comply with. I won't belabor it. That was ultimately struck, so it's the status quo, meaning if a board or committee, any public body, if they want to meet fully remote, they have that flexibility. If they don't, they want to meet in person like you are tonight, you have that flexibility through the end of March 2023. So that's good news. Next thing, the McCarthy Farm Land Grant. The money's in the bank. We got the cash, so I'm extremely happy about that. That was in mid-July.
It's in the mail for a long time, huh?
Yeah, it's been in the mail for a long time, but it's now in the bank, so that is good. I had to push quite hard to get that before the conservation restriction has been finalized, because we're still negotiating that with the state, and the delay is all them. So we got the money up front. I did give them a letter formally committing that we will finalize the CR and we will record it at the registry, et cetera. That's all fine. Next, we got vacation that we received the next round of the Regional Dispatch State 911 grant, which is the last year of fully funding our regional dispatch costs. So that's over almost $328,000. So thank you to the Regional Dispatch Center in Holbrook and Chief Duffy and his team for helping secure that. Next year, that reimbursement, assuming we get it again, will start to decline. The first 3 years are 100%, and then it goes down from there. Next, we also received notification from the state that we are receiving another grant through the Green Communities Program for almost $98,000. I can't give any details on that yet because the state's made it very clear they want to do their press release and their public relations before the community gives out any details. So hopefully at our next meeting we can talk more about that. But I want to thank Jen for her work because she does all the work securing those types of grants. Next, as the board knows and many in the community know, unfortunately our newly hired Council on Aging Director decided to resign after only a few days on the job. She decided to stay at the community she came from. We were very disappointed. Obviously, we did not see that coming. None of us saw that coming. And in particular, this was someone that was like a known quantity. Peggy, our longtime COA director, had a long-standing professional relationship with her, so sort of all the more surprising. Ultimately, it was clearly not a good fit, so I suppose it's better that we know sooner rather than later and when things get more difficult. So Peggy's agreed to help us a little bit part-time to help keep everything afloat. We'll obviously re-advertise and go through the proper process, to hire the most qualified person for that position. So that is unfortunate, but we'll move forward. Next, our assistant town accountant has just given us her notice that she'll be leaving, Serena Amaral, who's been the assistant town accountant for a long time.
Where's she going?
Unfortunately, she's going to a community whose name will live in infamy, the town of Dighton.
Mullen strikes again.
Yeah, I assume my phone's going to be blowing up any moment,
sure.
right? But Mullen strikes
sure.
again, so he'll get his. But I'm happy for Serena. It's our loss, but I'm happy for her. It's a very good opportunity for her. She's stepping up to be a town accountant, and it'll be a great community for her to work in. And I just want to publicly thank her for all the work she's done. She's weathered many difficult transitions in this town over the years, and kept the accounting department afloat. And we talked a lot about integrity tonight and commitment, and she has all of that. So we.
Yeah, she's been the constant within that department.
She's been the constant,
through a lot of turmoil over the years.
That's right.
And I mean, I can't say enough about it. In fact, actually, when you mentioned it to me the other day, I had just finished saying that I felt so good about having the new accountant in there that he has Serena to lean on with Megan having gone to the highway department. And you're like, oh, well, now that you've said that, Mike, let me tell you this. So, yeah.
And we were joking at our all department head staff meeting earlier today because the new town accountant, Scott, who's only been there a few weeks, he's like, I'm the senior, I'm the longest tenured guy in the accounting department now, so that's kind of funny.
It's a great opportunity for her, though.
It's a good opportunity for her. It's a tough climate right now to hire folks, so I'll just put out to the community if anybody's interested in applying for the job of assistant town accountant. It's a great opportunity and good benefits for the town. So that will be posted immediately if it isn't already. I know it's. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. That's right. Thank you for correcting me, Stacy. Right. So we have to. It's a union position. The union has the first option for that. So if no one from the internal pool of candidates decides, then it'll be posted externally. Sorry for that. That was Next, I wanted to mention the billboard that the board signed the host community agreement with is working its way through the state permitting process. They have a public hearing with Mass DOT's Office of Outdoor Advertising this Thursday, the 11th. Hopefully all will go smoothly with that. They'll get through that process. They've already gone through the town's local zoning process, so they'll be good to go. My first time going through a billboard hearing with the state, so I will be in attendance, but I don't have much experience with it, so I'll let you know how it goes. We're obviously fully supporting it. We've given our letters of support. Union negotiations similarly are going well. We have 2 out of the 5 units. We're pretty much there. They need to ratify it on their end, but we're making very good progress with the help of Clifford and Kenny. John is here tonight. And kind of related to that, I just wanted to thank, as I was thinking about doing my report tonight and mentioning the union negotiations, I really did want to thank publicly all of our staff. And as I go through the categories of the bargaining units, there's clerical, highway, parks, tree, 2 unions within the police department, fire, all of our department heads, and all of our other non-union staff. We have a great team, and I took some vacation time recently and was talking to some family from out of town, and everybody always asked me how the job's going. That's the first thing I always talk about, is that I'm fortunate to be working with some great people. So pleased with that. And then my last item is just that I will be out of town all next week, taking my younger son off to college, so I'll be coming back as an empty nester.
Oh, another vacation, huh?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see who ends up quitting on this vacation.
Yeah, I know.
Right, Jen? So he goes on
Don't put
vacation,
it
I
out
know,
into the
I know, we'll
universe.
put it out
Don't
there, you know.
say it.
Okay, Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectperson Childs.
I just want to say, I went to the Rockland Farmers Market this weekend, and it was fantastic. It was so good, and it was wicked hot, and it was crowded and packed, and they actually had an ice cream vendor that did alcoholic ice cream, which was kind of fun. An espresso martini ice cream with real espresso beans. It was fantastic, and they manufacture it out of the sandpaper factory, by the way. So I encourage everybody to go to the Rockland Farmers Market on August 20th is the next one. So that's, I was very excited about what we did tonight. I think it was a really big deal, and I'm honored to be a part of it and, you know, play a little part in helping the town move on to the next journey.
Thank you, Lori. Selectperson Shortall.
I was very excited tonight to think that we had 3 such highly qualified candidates within the department who are willing to take whatever role comes down the road for them in the future. I mean, I just think it speaks volumes for the police department that we have in place at this time. And I know that's, a lot of it is the officers themselves, but it's also the leadership that we've had in place for so long. So he will be sorely missed. I do look forward to seeing the advances that the new police chief can make. And I think it's a very exciting time.
Thank you, Donna. Selectperson Needham.
I agree. Tonight was very inspiring, and I was very much honored to be a part of it. And, you know, from listening to each of the candidates, each of them pretty much mentioned that they set their own bar high. And I enjoyed listening to their leadership skills, but I also enjoyed the knowingness that we have not only a new chief that has wonderful new goals and a new vision, but he has a highly acclaimed, inspired team to do that with, and we are so fortunate. So I gather inspiration from these 3 interviews, and really enjoyed just listening and being a part of it. On an aside, I also wanted to mention about a week and a half ago, I went to the Commonwealth Builders ribbon cutting, and on Weymouth Street, Chris Fontaine and his wife were able to introduce us to his beautiful business. I also, on a personal aside, I know the Fontaines and the founders of Commonwealth Business, the trainers, from my days back in Quincy. And I liked to joke that day that I came from Quincy, so I kind of set a trend and they followed suit. But we have a wonderful new neighbor with Commonwealth Building, and it was a beautiful facility, and I just know that they're going to have a great experience here as well. So that was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony.
Thank you, Tiffany. Vice Chairman Nyman.
I'll also touch upon the interviews we had tonight with the 3 qualified candidates for Chief of Police. I was honored and proud to be a part of the process to pick the next police chief for the town of Rockland. I think Nick will do well leading the men and women of the Rockland Police Department, and I look forward to his leadership. And I also want to thank Chief John Llewellyn for his many years of dedicated service to the town of Rockland. We will sorely miss him, but we got him until September 16th, so.
All right, thank you, Kara. Yeah, I'll piggyback on what everybody else said. You know, there's a lot of things we do up here that are just, you know, a quick, you know, make a motion and it passes through. And something like this, the appointment of the chief, hiring of Doug, Jen, creating HR, those are the impactful things that we really have an opportunity to do. And, you know, hopefully we're in a position that none of us on this board will probably get to do it again. Hopefully this is, we had the last chief for 16 years, and hopefully Lieutenant Zioli or Chief Zioli will be a long-term chief for us as well, as John was. And with that, I'd also just like to mention that we'll be doing Rockland Police Appreciation Day again. I think it's our third year, maybe fourth year doing it, and it'll be September 3rd, Saturday, September 3rd, at the police station. So look forward to that. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to go into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, map 24, lot 26, per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Hometown America versus Town of Rockland, and per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Craig Erickson versus Rockland Fire Department. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, not to reconvene. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call vote. Selectman Childs?
Yes.
Selectman Shorto?
Yes.
Selectman Needham?
Yes.
Selectman Nyman?
Yes.
And myself, unanimous. Thank you. Good night.